Camp controversy. It is said that Stephen Hillenburg, the creator of SpongeBob, didn't want a SpongeBob Baby spin-off, but after some time of the sad demise of Mr. Hillenburg, a show called Camp emerged. And Camp is literally what it is, a kid's version of SpongeBob. So how do you see that as? Well, I'll tell you how some fans see it as. Stephen didn't want SpongeBob to be made into a baby's format. Camp is SpongeBob in the baby's format, and it got released after Stephen's passing. Therefore, Nick was holding on to it until, they could safely release it. But others think that since there was about 2 years of gap between both the events, it probably was a coincidence and this controversy doesn't need to exist. So what do you think?
Controversy.
Or
coincidence.
Or rather, misunderstanding. Because you see, it is said that Stephen Hillenburg didn't want a baby spin-off, but did he even ever say that? Well, the closest answer to that, I think, is this interview where you can see him saying that he don't see it happening, but not he doesn't want to see, or something similar to that. So it can just mean that at the time of the interview, he didn't see the possibility of such a show happening. And so the situation could very well be much simpler than how it's been seen as, but we don't know everything. Squidward's suicide. A very famous creepypasta considered one of the best creepypastas ever, where as the name says, Squidward kills himself. You'd probably know about this one. In case you don't, then I guess you won't like any spoilers from me before reading it. It's a neat representation of what's allegedly an actual episode which never was released for being too messed up. But take it with a stack of salt.
I'm ready!
SpongeBob video games. Just one of the fun entries to address the various video games made on SpongeBob, like Lights Camera Pants, Battle for Bikini Bottom, The Yellow Avenger, etc.
Hi, how are you?
SpongeBob's sexuality. Since the early 2000s, this has been debated a number of times. You would especially remember this particular tweet by Nick that caused much chaos around what's probably a misunderstanding that SpongeBob is gay. We can safely say misunderstanding because Stephen Hillenburg himself had made it clear in an early 2000s interview that not only the characters were somewhat asexual, but also how their sexual preferences were never thought about while making the show, as that was not related to the goal of the production. The goal was to entertain. So yeah, not gay, asexual, somewhat. 7 Deadly Sins. You know about this already. It's quite famous with tons of articles and videos on the internet, including this quick shot of mine as well. So perhaps I'll take the liberty to play it for you here. SpongeBob's pet snail Gary. Since he's mostly seen eating or looking for things to eat, as per the theory, Gary represents gluttony. SpongeBob and Patrick's friend Sandy. Since Sandy is seen bragging a lot about her home, as per the theory, she's assigned pride. Mr. Krabs' arch nemesis Plankton. For being jealous of Mr. Krabs' success, the theory says that he has a lot of envy. SpongeBob's boss, Mr. Krabs. Because he's always up to make her save a bucket too, the theory gives him the tag of greed. SpongeBob's neighbor Squidward. For always being angry on SpongeBob, the theory has wrath for him. SpongeBob's best friend Patrick. Although really cute, theory says he's a sloth for always laying around. And last but obviously not the least, the start of the show, the start of the shot, SpongeBob. I'm a fan myself, but sorry to say, for always being overexcited and enthusiastic, somehow, as per the theory, he symbolizes lust. This theory, however, has apparently been debunked by Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob. Spin-offs. So there are 2 spin-offs to the show so far, the Patrick Star Show and Camp the one we talked about at the beginning. It's just a fun fact entry, that's it for this one. We'll be talking more about them later.
Epilogue.
Milking. Well, to many fans it seems that Nick is now milking SpongeBob. Why else would they put out 2 spin-offs? Cause most would not like that kind of stuff if they love the original. Similar to Hanna-Barbera reusing the Scooby formula, though they did that for a very different reason. But in this case, fans really suspect that they're milking the idea as much as they can. But don't worry, at the end of the day, this is what a group of people thinks. So of course it's up to you what you want to watch this Saturday. Season 6 to 8. Loosely connected with the previous entry is this one for season 6, 7 and 8. These seasons are basically least received by the fans. Fans say that that's where the show started on a downslope. They should have ended it around season 4 and that they're now just squeezing the sponge as much as they can.
One winner later.
Gross out. Well, while we're talking about season 6, 7 and 8 of SpongeBob, the ones that were not well received are somehow also the ones that have gross out scenes. A lot of gross out scenes. So do the SpongeBob fans not like to be grossed out? Was that the reason for the decline? Nobody knows.
I love you.
THQ. Yes sir, THQ, that video game company that no longer is active, is the main publisher for most of the SpongeBob games. Just a fun fact. Bikini Atoll. This theory suggests that this whole Bikini Bottom thing might have been taken from Bikini Atoll, which is a coral reef in the Marshall Islands. So basically this is a huge area consisting of about 23 islands, and 23 is also the number of nuclear tests that were done here by the US between 1946 to 1958. The inhabitants were relocated and the area remains inhabitable to this day. So the theory comes in that maybe the world of Bikini Bottom is inhabited by the creatures who were mutated by the nuclear testing. Yes and no. Yes, Bikini Bottom is in fact named after Bikini Atoll, and no, for the nuclear theory, they didn't go that far. Memes. Needless to say, SpongeBob is famous for memes. Memes are famous for SpongeBob. I mean, do I even have to say that? Does it even have to be here in the entry? We have come for your nectar. You know it, your friends know it, your family knows it, your girlfriend,
One eternity later.
sisters, far-flung uncles, brothers, kid knows it. That SpongeBob equals memes. Yeah.
3,000 years later.
Spongehenge. Spongehenge is an episode in the 5th season which is infamous not because of some overboard way to make humor, much the opposite. This episode is in fact not even considered funny, but disturbing in many ways. If you haven't watched it and you don't want any spoilers, then you may skip to the next entry now. In this episode, SpongeBob builds a Spongehenge, which is a reference to Stonehenge, so that he can get himself rid of the jellyfishes that are after him for the sound that SpongeBob's holes would make due to the strong winds that for some reason blow throughout the episode. But all SpongeBob cares about is to have the jellyfishes fooled, who literally took his job, his best friend, and in a way his life away from him, all because of this sound that they are attracted to. SpongeBob is eventually able to do just that and finally leave the cave where he'd been making the Spongehenge and be back to Bikini Bottom, just to find that it is gone. And the way humans are still examining Stonehenge, in the end aliens are shown to be examining Spongehenge after 3,000 years. So you see a lot of dark and unsettling things in there. There are literally articles and dedicated videos made on this episode discussing not just the reason of the wind, but the reason of this episode too. And if this is the ending that the show had planned to leave us with, but then later for some reason they went on. Who knows? But I do wonder which one is more mysterious now. Bikini Bottom 100% ending. While we're talking about ends, in the game Battle for Bikini Bottom, there's a special secret ending for the player that collects every golden spatula, which would be 100 golden spatulas hidden around Bikini Bottom. Defeating the final boss after collecting them all would lead to that secret ending for Bikini Bottom. If you didn't know about it and you want to see the ending after beating the game yourself, then skip to the next entry now.
Say that again.
That again.
References in other shows. You see, SpongeBob is the most successful Nicktoon, and one of the longest running animated series, and one of the most popular cartoons ever, and whatnot. SpongeBob made cleaning fun. Wherever you see, there are plushes, brushes, weird toys, merchandise, and of course it's appeared an awful lot of times in other Nick cartoon shows, and other non-Nick cartoon shows, and other non-Nick non-cartoon shows. Okay, you get the point. It's everywhere. Look, the list is huge and I can literally make a 2-hour video talking about every time SpongeBob was referenced in other shows, and I'm sure they would still be missed entries. So allow me to handpick a couple for you for now. Enjoy.
You wanna watch SpongeBob?
SpongeBob.
Even SpongeBob did it.
Buon compleaños, Guidardo.
Squidward's side in an episode. It is Squidward's side but televised. In the season 12 episode called SpongeBob in Random Land, Squidward and SpongeBob are out to deliver a Krabby Patty in Random Land, which is considered an extremely dangerous place where there is no logic to the things that happen. Everything is pretty random. Squidward very soon realizes that this is not going to be just another usual delivery, as they keep stumbling upon things that make no sense, including this.
Excuse me, ma'am. Did you order a Krabby Patty?
Can I dunk it in cuckoo like my marshmallows?
This. And this, a series of doors out of nowhere, of which Squidward opens 3. The first one reveals. In the second one, he sees. And though the third one now has been changed to this, a baby Squidward, but initially what Squidward saw in it was this. The infamous Squidward clip of himself, aka Red Mist. It's quite amazing if you ask me that Nick did that, a TV program referencing a creepypasta. How often does that happen? I also see it as their way to say that the Squidward thing isn't true and it makes no sense, which is why it resides in Random Land, as that is where there are things that don't make any sense. If you see how I'm saying this, maybe not, but yeah, that's what the entry is about.
This place is a nightmare.
Astrology with Squidward. Let's do another one of Squidward, why not? Astrology with Squidward was a bunch of Squidward shorts that appeared in the Nick commercials between 2000 and 2001, where Squidward would present horoscopes, or rather a roast of the zodiac signs. Apparently there were 6 such shorts in which Squidward talked about Pisces, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and Sagittarius. But regardless of Squidward skipping 6 zodiac signs, there had been massive debate that there exists 2 more shots for Virgo and Libra, which are lost. But if there are lost shots out there, why just Virgo and Libra? Why can't all remaining 6 be lost, assuming Squidward had covered all of the 12 zodiac signs, you might ask? Well, that is apparently because of a misleading Wikipedia article followed by a bunch of posts on the internet using that misleading Wikipedia article as a source, resulting in more and more people believing it, ultimately giving rise to what's probably a misunderstanding. We could say that with better surety now because Vincent Waller, a SpongeBob crew member, himself clarified in 2018 that what's available online, that is these 6 shots, are all that they did, and no other shot is lost or anything because they never covered the entire chart in the first place. Well, thanks to Vincent's memory, because when Vincent asked Roger Bumpus about this, the voice actor of Squidward itself, he couldn't even recollect doing any such shots in the first place. Yeah, no wonder why this resides in tier 2. Well, anyways, it's pretty safe to say there is no lost media.
Hey, SpongeBob's back!
Incidental 70. Enough of Squidward, let's talk about someone else. How about someone nobody knows much about anyway, like this thing? The show has a number of background characters who have a separate fan base of their own. Such characters play a great role in making the show more complete. They are in the scenes where the demand of the story is to fill the environment and inform the audience that the ongoing event is known across the town in the show. But in the process of informing the audience of such details, the show sometimes gives us certain details that we sure are not much informed about. One of which is this character. He gained popularity in the season 1 episode called Pickles, where he spoke these 3 golden words.
Hey, SpongeBob! SpongeBob's back.
And after that, well, he was not seen for over 20 years, but recently made its much awaited return in the first season of the Patrick Star Show in the episode The Yard Scale, in which he was seen wearing a t-shirt with number 70 on it. That is also why he is called Incidental 70. And well, then he finally made his official return to the main series in season 13 episode Potato Puff. So yeah, but didn't say anything still. Those 3 words,
Hey, SpongeBob's back.
are to this day the only time we heard from him. King Neptune's. Another interesting design, King Neptune. But which one? I would have sworn they are 2 different characters from 2 different shows. But no, these are 2 designs for the same character, King Neptune. The movie design is way different than the TV show design. And yes, you know, as you saw in this video, how characters can change depending on changes in the team working behind it. But how come such massive difference, you might ask? Well, there is a different reason in this case, because this one is due to a firewall that was between Nickelodeon and Paramount Pictures, due to which stuff was recreated because it couldn't be reused. Later though, when the firewall was off, we saw the movie King Neptune's crown making appearance in a couple of TV show episodes.
Enough.
Mindy not in other episodes. Well, King Neptune is not alone. His daughter Princess Mindy faced similar issues. After her first appearance in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, we didn't get to see her in the series. This was also due to that firewall that was there between 2004 to 2015, which prevented any film element to be used in the show. But again, after the firewall was lifted, we got to see her in the season 12 episode SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout that was made to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Sponge.
No, not again.
Mrs. Puff is a criminal. This is a relatively new theory by the YouTuber Alex Bale, which says that Mrs. Puff has been running away from her past life where she indirectly caused death to an individual. He has this 30-minute long video jam-packed with mind-blowing observations that would lead you to believe that there is much more to Mrs. Puff than what meets the eye. Like how she is delusional and how she has a dark past and a bleak future. And just like everything else, this is also linked in the description. In this very popular video, you'll get to see how apparently Mrs. Puff is not her real name, why she changed her name, and where she actually is from, how she likes to make the escape, and the secret of this episode, the answer to this photo, why she has all this stuff, and so much more. I don't want to spoil all the fun. One course meal creepypasta. That was pretty dark. Goes to show we're on our way to the depths of the iceberg. So here is another creepypasta. You remember the one course meal, the season 7 episode of SpongeBob, right? Yeah, the one where Plankton tries to right? No big deal. But well, it is a big deal when someone tells us that there was actually an alternative version of that episode that was called not one course meal but Plankton Got Served. Why was it called Plankton Got Served? Well, because allegedly in that episode, this attempt of Plankton actually succeeds. So apparently the OP, this user, was such a huge fan of the show that when he got to know that the episode was going to premiere on the next site, he kept reloading the page at the time until he saw an upload called Plankton Got Served. And as per his theory, the uploaders at the time somehow uploaded the wrong file. According to him, a version of the episode that they put so much work into making just to never ever release. And as soon as they realized it, they immediately removed that, uploading the right file, because after watching that episode, when he reloaded the page, what showed up was the actual one course meal episode that we've seen. Damn, we all missed it.
Now don't move it till I say
Squidward toenail scene. For a change now, let's talk about a scene that we could be sure about. You see, SpongeBob is like a cute looking ghost Pokemon. It's cute, but at times it can create much cringe to even get adults to feel a bit squeamish. And as we know, any series with such a character would be incomplete without a nail destruction scene. And yes, SpongeBob has one too. In the season 6 episode House Fancy, where SpongeBob helps Squidward with moving the sofa, and then what happens is, well, let's just have a look.
help me move this sofa.
You got it, Squiddy.
Now don't move it till I say ow! Okay, it's on my foot. Now don't.
Okay.
Ow! SpongeBob, I told you not to move it till I said ow! Why do you keep moving it?
'Cause you keep saying, ow!
Ow!
Yeah, you asked SpongeBob for help with moving the sofa, how can it go wrong, right? What were you thinking, Squidward? Sponge Boomers. First 3 seasons of SpongeBob were undoubtedly great, but some fans have gone out of the way saying this that they have actually got themselves a term called Sponge Boomers. It's said that people in this category, aka Sponge Boomers, are the fans who don't consider anything produced under SpongeBob SquarePants after season 3 to be any good at all, and that the first 3 seasons are all that SpongeBob should be known for. But well, you be the judge with this one. SpongeBob Rule 34. You see, such fan theories find internet to be their best home. And internet is home for much crazier things as well, like Rule 34, which is not really a rule but an internet statement which states that any topic that you can think of has its graphic version on the internet somewhere. Mostly in the form of fan art, and less than always for stuff that's by nature not erotic, because you know erotic is already erotic. So this rule talks more about the non-erotic stuff, saying that hey, there most certainly is a sexual take of that what you're holding so close to your heart. So yeah, that been established, now you can guess that this entry indicates the various SpongeBob Rule 34 fan art or media out there on the internet. Incognito. SpongeBob in China. SpongeBob in China was a mockery video that received so much attention in 2007 that it was advertised as being the biggest YouTube comedy video of all time from Netherlands with over 80 million views and one of the top 20 worldwide. On the Boom Chicago site. What is Boom Chicago? It's the group that created the video. The video's popularity made them create SpongeBob SquarePants in China too. However, now if you go and watch the video, you will probably comparatively see far less views as it was removed and reposted due to what Boom Chicago says was certain hacking incident. The first movie was the finale. This is for the mind behind Mr. Stephen Hillenburg. The 2004 movie was the finale of SpongeBob for him, as in 2004 he decided not to renew his contract with SpongeBob. He then returned to a life much like his early days in the art institute, surfing, making animations, etc. Yep, it sure is. The show seems to love incorporating Friedrich Gustav Maximilian Schreck, the actor who played the vampire Count Orlok in the epic silent horror movie called
Eine Symphonie des Grauens.
Basically Nosferatu, a symphony of horror from 1922, widely regarded as the first vampire film ever. Although its adaptation from the source novel Dracula was a bit loose, the novel writer Bram Stoker's wife Florence Balcom still decided to file a legal dispute with the makers of the movie as it was unofficial and for whatever amount of inspiration it carried from the book, it was unauthorized. Due to this, Nosferatu was nearly lost because the court had ordered all of the copies of the movie to be destroyed. But glad we are that it somehow made it and has completed exactly 101 years at the time of me making this video. Okay, that's all good history, but what is he doing in SpongeBob? Well, the reasons vary, but in the context of the show, he's there because he's the night shift manager at Krusty Krab. Other than his well-known cameo in the scene of the season 2 episode Graveyard Shift, where he turns out to be the one who had been flickering the lights, he's actually made a number of appearances, so let's look at them.
Hey, boss! Can this little fella here take over my shift tonight? There's a pet for people who like to run and one for people who don't. A pet for folks who avoid the sun.
Nosferatu! Nosferatu, proceed. What's happening?
We have to get you to Dr. Calamari right away.
In fact, the creepy arms of this creature have made their reach even to the Patrikios show, Camcoral, and also the Nintendo DS game called SpongeBob Truth or Square. SpongeBob in a way has really been helping to keep this classic character fresh in the memory of the audience. Yummer. Apologies if that came through as a jump scare. It wasn't meant to be one. This unsettling character was found by a couple of SpongeBob art collectors while hunting through the sprite sheets of the Flash game SpongeBob Save the Day on the Nick website in search for anything preserved in the archives. And preserved there was. Nobody knew what that thing is and why is it even there in the sprite sheets, because it's not in the game. Of course, leading to ideas linking it with other things in the game and the sprite sheets like these can socks, this torn suit of Sandy, etc. And honestly, linking this with this was a bit horrifying. But that's okay because the mystery now is pretty much closed. As it turned out, the sprite was a 10-year-old 3D character model, which the developers forgot to take out of the game, since it was only intended to be a placeholder and a little in-joke amongst the internal teams in the department, and was not supposed to be a part of the final product. Well, thanks for the nightmares, guys. Now we hope to see Yummer in some future project as a character that we're supposed to see.
Bye, Squidward.
SpongeBob likes Squidward. I almost said that in reverse. Well, of course that can't be true. Squidward isn't like anyone. Well, we'll talk about that in a bit. But SpongeBob liking Squidward? Yes, considering SpongeBob likes everything and everyone under the sun. Oh, you mean like? Well, it's like been noticed in some of the episodes that SpongeBob says certain things that indicate he is interested in Squidward. Well, yeah, let's have a look at this from season 8 episode Are You Happy Now?
Wonderful! My happiest memory!
He's so handsome.
Talking about handsome Squidward, in the season 5 episode The Two Faces of Squidward, just look at these bits.
Just remember, Squidward, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Squidward!
SpongeBob?
You're back! Oh, Squidward, I love you no matter how many times we smash your face.
I almost wish that meant something.
Okay, so far it's still fine. I mean, he's saying it in front of Squidward, which is okay. We compliment people in social life, that's normal, right? But check the scene out from the season 5 episode 20,000 Parties Under the Sea.
So long, lad. Make me lots of money.
Bye, Squidward. Bye, Mr. Krabs.
Bye, Squidward.
You said bye, Squidward, twice.
I like Squidward.
What more does a fan theory need to be born? Lost MTV Video. In mid-2000s, MTV2 came up with a project called Video Mods, which took game characters and gave them their own little music video. It had 2 seasons with 6 episodes in total. Each episode would have multiple shows broadcasting these videos put together from the video games. And as per the schedule, in the episode that aired on July 29th, 2005, the last project that broadcasted was of SpongeBob, for which they took footages from the game Lights Camera Pans. The name of the song was All the Small Things by the American rock band Blink-182. The thing is though that people did remember watching it around the time, but somehow it just couldn't be found on the internet. You know, as it was one of those rare things from the 2000s. That, however, was until a fine day when YouTuber Maddie Dan uploaded it after stumbling upon it in one of her 2005 compilation tapes. So yeah, there you go, your lost media found. But if you rather prefer the chaos around lost media, then the silence that follows is discovery, that just to make you feel better, the video Maddie Dan uploaded did have like the first couple of seconds of the music video, as she was watching VH1's 40 most awesomely bad dirty songs of the time. So you can consider those initial few seconds of the music video to still be lost and well, oh wait. You know what, never mind.
I've always sort of liked you.
Squidward doesn't hate his neighbors. Okay, so we're here now. It's important for the makers of a show to make sure that the personality of each character is very much clear in the audience's head. Like you won't expect anything smart coming out of this guy or something silly coming out of this one. And when it does, it's either hilarious or alerting. Like how Squidward is always shown as someone who'd not ever care less and is very much self-centered, always annoyed and happy in its own world. But when he breaks character, it's nothing but heartwarming. I mean, just check out this final scene from the season 5 episode Pizza Delivery, where he very maturely deals with a difficult customer who deeply hurts SpongeBob. We have many such instances to refer, where Squidward seems to only want good for people in the end, only in the veil of sternness. Almost like some boy genius visiting outer space to fight the aliens for his sister, who he's conditioned us to believe he absolutely hates. Apparently not really, as when she's not around, he misses her so much that he decides to hire her. Okay, let's get back down to the Bikini Bottom. Remember when we talked about the season 2 episode Graveyard Shift? Just seconds before the Nosferatu revelation, we hear Squidward say these golden words.
SpongeBob, no matter what I've said, I've always sort of liked you.
Also in the season 3 episode, Squidward in fact thinks of SpongeBob a genius as Einstein for discovering fire. Such a different, appreciating side of Squidward coming out in this episode, even if that's for a short while. But check out the season 4 episode Krusty Tars, where while having much fun at the Krusty Tar Hotel, Squidward lets SpongeBob in on it as well. That is nice, ain't it? Maybe Squidward is not annoyed all the time. This entry is just to theorize the possibility that Squidward is maybe like one of these characters who are something they don't want to look like and are not that bad in real after all. Understandable, right? I guess we all have a Squidward inside of us.
Maybe it's the way you're dressed.
Sans. Now what does Sans have to do with SpongeBob? It doesn't. Honestly, it has to do with Patrick rather. Come on, they don't look similar in any way, shape or form. And that's right, they don't. They just sound similar. No way. Okay, you know what? Just listen to this. And now this.
Maybe it's the way you're dressed.
How in the world are they? Oh wait.
Maybe it's the way you're dressed. Maybe it
makes no sense.
In Dostan,
SpongeBob in Tehran. This tier also has SpongeBob going to a place, and this time is Tehran, in Iran. This is a Persian SpongeBob bootleg movie which showed up in 2017, and though it didn't get the permission from Nick to dub, it was released with an unofficial Persian dub. No, there is no English dub yet, only the English subtitles that were manually added to the movie on YouTube, and they are very well done. Outside of YouTube though, the movie is not streamable anywhere. I won't spoil it for you because I cannot, as the movie ends bit abruptly around the 43-minute mark, leaving us wanting more, mostly cause, like SpongeBob in China, it's pretty good. Internet seems to be loving it as well. Although not perfect, the production quality is not bad, and despite it switches from 3D animation to certain snip right out of the series without a warning, it's worth a watch. Mr. Krabs killed Pearl's mom. Let's talk about this guy again. We talked about him a bit in the earlier tier. No wonder, I guess, cause he's officially now known as the SpongeBob guy.
Guess I'm the SpongeBob guy now.
So Alex Bale, a filmmaker or YouTuber, has been making these cool videos with believable fan theories one after the other. And this entry refers to something he talked about in the 4th installment in the series, where he tackles multiple age-old questions in the Bikini Bottom universe. And he has this one theory called the evolution theory, using which he undoes it all. So he starts by taking us through the prehistoric Bikini Bottom to prove how the Bikini Bottom creatures couldn't be mutations of the Bikini Adultess, as that happened millions of years after what we see in the episodes like SB-129 and where we see the characters still in pretty evolved forms. He moves on drawing our attention towards these weird references in the season 3 episode called Krusty Krab training video to piece together the possibility of a war where Mr. Krabs killed this whale. A whale is what he killed. A whale is what Pearl is. You see what he's saying?
Mother Pearl!
Yeah. Skin theory. Skin theory is, well, yeah, we do call it skin theory, but looks like the word theory shouldn't even be there, because it always appears as the writers have been literally shoving it in our faces, almost wanting us to think how the creatures of Bikini Bottom wear certain skin that makes them look something they're not, like hair. And how about this one? And at times there even are multiple layers of skins, making us wonder where after all does it all end and who they actually are. Sort of reminds me of this unsettling YouTube video, which is by the way also a part of dark YouTube Iceberg, but anyways. There are just too many examples, so let me just show you a couple of my favorite ones.
What can I get you boys?
What are you looking at? Those.
You checked out of the hospital this morning.
Here's the bill.
You mean I'm awake?
Well, you guys be the judge.
My name's Steve Hillenberg.
Steven was alive and Camcorder was in protection. This entry kind of takes us back to the tier 1 where we discussed the controversy with Camcorder, SpongeBob Under Years. Basically, after the passing of SpongeBob's creator Stephen Hillenberg, when a show called Camcorder came out, it faced much criticism by the fans. Cause for all the reasons aside, it seemed like something that Stephen would never approve. Why? Cause he mentioned it a couple of times that a SpongeBob Baby spin-off is not what he sees happening. Even until that point, things were like, okay, audience was frustrated, sure, but soon confusion fell down on the situation when this Camcorder short leaked, namely, I'm urging you to leave. This short that was based off of the series displayed a credit of Stephen Hillenberg being the creator of the show, about which when asked, Vincent Paul Weller tried to explain over Twitter how Stephen was indeed aware about the prequel being developed. It was just very unfortunate that he couldn't get to see it. While going by how the show turned out with the fans, they're not sure if he would have watched it a lot anyway. But that being said, it's worth mentioning that things are pretty slippery with this one, and nothing is known for sure as to how much Stephen was actually involved with Camcorder, if at all. Gary is smart. SpongeBob's pet Gary may not just be a filler character that this show wants us to perceive him as he seems behind the scenes, maybe he's not as dumb as some of the other characters in the show may seem, as despite having no fingers.
Excuse me, darling.
We see how he can tie the shoelaces in the season 2 episode Your Shoes Untied, and how although all he can say is he seemed to be able to read the English words just fine, as we saw in the season 3 episode Rockabye by Valve. Actually, more than just smart, people have pointed out moments that depict how he maybe isn't even a snail to begin with, because in the season 5 episode Fungus Among Us, Gary turns out to be the only bikini bottom creature immune to virus. So maybe he after all is not just a snail on the inside. In fact, in multiple episodes we get to literally see the inside of the body of the snail, and it's different every time. Why? All this and more have been making the fans think of him as some alien with supernatural abilities to get things done and morph in ways beyond Bikini Bottom's scope. This particular entry is one that can keep on going with such examples, so not sure what else to speak on this. How about I speak about this snail speaking in the season 1 episode Sleepy Time. Okay, it was a dream, but I never dreamt of my dog talking to me. Some people even go as far as saying that in the episode Sleepy Time, what we are looking at is actually the true form of Gary, and the snail form is just a disguise he likes to keep in Bikini Bottom for some reason. Okay, let that be the closer.
Hey, is that my patty?
SpongeBob 4D. I love it when certain pop culture icon comes out in ways that's larger than life, like Walter White bobblehead that was made to crash down to Earth from up above the stratosphere, or NASA beaming Beatles song across the universe, literally across the universe. But that's a way up above for sea sponges, especially in this Iceberg video, where we are heading towards the bottom. Also, since SpongeBob would be too square for a bobblehead and probably shouldn't be sent out in space, as we need him here on Earth more. How about an amusement park ride based on it? Yes sir, SpongeBob 4D, a simulator ride in which riders sit in a 3D theater on chairs with inbuilt motion functionality as the ride proceeds. So basically in this ride, SpongeBob is after Patrick, who has a pickle which SpongeBob needs to complete a Krabby Patty for a customer. It can be found in many theme parks and aquariums around the world. The chair in this amusement ride also incorporates various effects, all the way from the simple ones like smoke, scents, water, wind, to the more aggressive ones as air blasts, ticklers, vibrations, strobe lighting. All this combined makes it a 4D experience, hence SpongeBob 4D. However, some versions of the ride don't have these effects built in and should just be called SpongeBob 3D, which can be experienced from the comfort of your home sitting right here on YouTube itself, like I did yesterday.
You're talking about
girls, right?
Midlife frustration. Yes, banned episodes, of course. That's how we know a series is famous, I guess. And Midlife Crustacean is an episode which would have surprised us more had it not been banned. I mean, keeping a panty raid in the episode, I guess you'll agree would surely cause at least a bit of issues, you know. And it's not even a quick joke that lasts for a second. It is a full sequence, in fact kind of a main event that leads to the climax of the episode. How did these silly innocent looking sea creatures decide to commit an indecent act as such, you might wonder? Well, it's just one of the many activities that SpongeBob and Patrick execute, including their big night out in this episode. Because, you know, that's what the cool folks do. And Mr. Krabs, facing a midlife crisis, is inclined to join them no matter how silly they may seem. Because anything to feel young, right? None of the other activities they do in the episode are anywhere close to a panty raid, however. In fact, most of them are actually stuff for way too young of a person. Maybe more suitable for
babies.
Mr. Krabs, however, waits, hoping that eventually he will start
feeling it, 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 feeling it.
But finally, when he decides to leave these late night adventures, that is when Patrick reveals what their next big plan is going to be. The
panty raid.
And if that was not enough, the characters repeat the term back and forth a couple of times.
The panty raid.
Followed by them sneaking into a house to steal some panties, which turn out to be the ones that belong to Mr. Krabs' mom.
What are you doing with my bloomers?
I guess we're gonna have to stop pretending to be surprised by his banya.
I've discovered this copy.
Patrick and Gary are cousins. Who said it's only shipping that's around? Fans notice everything, and other relationships get noted as well. And this is not even a theory. It doesn't even require to be noticed. It's literally put out very much clearly in this episode, Rule of Thumb, from the season 4 of the show. How Patrick and Gary are actually cousins. There is no maybe there. And although it doesn't go with the theory that Gary is smart, because, well, but just stay with me. Even though the only way to go over this entry is to spoil this episode completely, let's do that anyway. So in Rule of Thumb, Patrick gets visited by the royal ministry, claiming to have uncovered a family tree, which depicts that Patrick is actually the descendant of one King Amoeba. Patrick, being King Amoeba's great-great-grandson, is now the king. That is well until the end of the episode, when removing the stain from the family tree reveals how the true king is actually Gary, in the process clearly showing how Gary and Patrick are related. So this is how it goes. The King Amoeba and Amoeba married Queen Mildew, a fish. Their daughter Princess Tulsa, a fish, married another fish, Yorick, and gave birth to Mutaket, a starfish. Mutaket married another sea star, Billy Bobstar, which somehow resulted in one of their childs being a sea sluggo. The other child was a starfish though, named Herbstar, who married Margie, and those two starfishes gave birth to SpongeBob's best friend Patrick Star, and his elder sister Sam Star, of course. Sluggo's child, on the other hand, beneath the coffee stain, turns out to be Gary, a snail, making him the first cousin of Patrick as per the sea star tree. So, you see this here? Yeah. Only one question. If the royal ministry had figured out that it's Gary beneath the stain, meaning he'd already removed the stain to see what's beneath it, how in the bikini bottom did the stain come back again? Am I making sense? Something for another video, I guess.
What are you, crazy? This is your show, right?
Intertidal zone. We know this thesis called the origin of species, but do we know what the origin of the bikini bottom species is? If you ever find that in your question paper, know that you have to write the intertidal zone. This unpublished educational comic book by Stephen Hillenburg was really the set of building blocks that was to turn into SpongeBob SquarePants, as the sea creatures illustrated by Stephen in the book were literally what the bikini bottom characters were based off. The primary reason for the comic when Stephen designed it in 1984 was to teach children of different sea creatures, as he was a marine science educator at the Ocean Institute in Dana Point, California, then known as Orange County Marine Institute. Stephen was asked by the director there to come up with a comic about tide pool ecology, which led him to create this masterpiece where he designed invertebrate sea creatures from the tide pools in Southern California. Fast forward a few years, Stephen is at California Institute of Arts, where he creates a short film called Wormholes as part of his thesis. Wormholes screened at Ottawa Film Festival in 1992, where the American animator Joe Murray saw it and was impressed more than enough to approach Stephen in the lobby of Ottawa Film Festival itself and offer him the dream job of working with him as a director of his coming animation series Rocco's Modern Life. It was while working on the last season of Rocko's Modern Life that the comic book Intertidal Zone came back to Stephen's life miraculously. Because on one of those days, when Stephen was talking to the American writer Martin Olson, Stephen expressed how he lacked such an idea of a show like Rocko's Modern Life in his life. While responding to that, Martin saw Stephen's Intertidal Zone that Stephen happened to have on him, a comic book that he had created back in the Ocean Institute, which Martin saw and went,
"What are you, crazy? This is your show right here."
Suggesting him to develop the Intertidal Zone into an animated series. Little did Stephen know that back in Marine Institute, what was intended to be educational to children would rather turn out to be an endless stream of entertainment for not just kids, but pretty much people of all ages all over the world.
The bottom of Bikini Bottom.
Bikini Bottom Mysteries. Bikini Bottom Mysteries exists probably due to the various fan theories that we've been talking about. It may not immediately feel to be, but as the sources say, it is a parody of such supposed conspiracies. First released on Facebook and the official SpongeBob YouTube channel in 2018, this web series has produced 3 seasons full of shorts, where an anonymous narrator covers the mysteries that surround the residents of the Bikini Bottom, claiming to get to the bottom of the Bikini Bottom. Deals with one fish in each episode, pointing out its peculiarities and summarizing it all near the end of the short. Post which we get a little bonus bit to ponder over as well, at the end of each episode with a quote,
"If the pineapple fits, live in it."
It's also interesting to point out how a series made primarily to tell aloud the flaws in the show have its own errors too. Maybe put in there on purpose, not sure, but yeah, there are a few. Like one in the episode 1 itself, where the incidental 27 is mistaken for a woman, a spelling error in the episode 12, etc. Yeah, intentional I guess, who knows. If not all of the oddities, perhaps ones like some episodes missing the bonus mystery in the end, and episode 21 only been posted on Facebook and not on YouTube. All that being said, it's a nice series which one can finish in one single sitting. SpongeBob Ahoy. Have you seen SpongeBob Ahoy? I bet you have. This is SpongeBob Ahoy. Or at least it would have been had the name not been changed. You know there are always these beta names to the characters and all. In fact, not only the character SpongeBob, but the show itself was initially planned to be called SpongeBob Ahoy. However, it was changed to stay clear of the copyright issues. And so SpongeBob had to take the lead. That is also how we lost the opportunity to see 6 extra holes on the face of the sponge, as SpongeBob had total 13. Since SpongeBob was a prototype of the modern day SpongeBob, there sure are other differences as well. Like SpongeBob's hat being red, blue, green, his shoes being much pointier, just like the hat actually. And if you see what I'm saying, he seems sillier in appearance than SpongeBob. I mean, yeah, SpongeBob as well may commit goof-ups, but he doesn't look half as goofy as SpongeBob. You know, I don't know, but you know what's interesting? They say that the reason the name was changed was cause SpongeBob had already been taken by some mop company, but you won't find anything about such a mop company that ever existed. So what was that all about? As a matter of fact, when I initially read through this iceberg and did a mild research, even before posting the first tier, I did try looking up the so-called mop brand and thought to myself that someone can certainly make a video on this because I didn't find a trace. And guess what? Someone was making a video on this. Oh, and a great one. Only about 3 days earlier, Kid Leaf Stoop would make this awesome upload, and no, it wasn't a mop, just in case you're wondering. But well, be it a mop, a bizarre superhero's friend, or a pencil, it all gave us SpongeBob and his hair still. All from the laughter, the memories of growing old, singing that wild intro since long ago, to scrutinizing stuff about it in these iceberg videos. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Trampoline. From the very start, I feel we sure are down to some obscurity. At least for me, because in the game SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, there apparently were trampolines that could help you with the jump. It was planned to have them in order to launch the player higher, but for some reason the feature had to be patched out. So developers made very sure that each and every one of such trampolines are out of the game. All of them but one. Because it seems as they forgot to look behind this particular town in the Gulagun Pier. Now perhaps they intentionally kept one, maybe as an Easter egg kind of thing, but I personally didn't find much information on this. All I know is thanks to this short by Jammy suggested by the OP itself. These last few seconds of it in particular. Let's have a look.
This last one is just kinda cool. During development, the trampolines in the game were planned to launch you higher if you bubble bounced on them, but the feature was eventually scrapped. It does remain in the final game though. Behind this town on the Gulagoon Pier, there's a hidden trampoline that they must have forgotten about. Pretty neat.
And how was that figured out? Let's not even worry about that. Boom. Next up we have... Okay, next we have... Did you hear that? Yeah, that's what's next. The sound for a disappointing situation is what this entry is about, and it's called Boom. That's pretty much it for this one actually. So let's move on.
Are you ready, kids?
SpongeBob album. As the name suggests, this entry simply refers to the various SpongeBob music albums out there, like the Yellow Album, The Best Day Ever, and of course the very first compilation album that came out on the 10th anniversary of the show in 2009, SpongeBob's Greatest Hits. Well, just to name a few. Yeah, that's all good, but of course nothing as good as Krabby Patty ingredients. Now the world knows that nobody knows the main ingredient which makes Krabby Patty Krabby Patty. That is what Mr. Krabs have been hiding away from Plankton. And of course when there's something like that in the show, there would be theories, and there would be dark theories. The darkest one probably being that cheeseburgers have cheese, chicken burgers have chicken in them, veggie burgers have all kinds of veggies. So Krabby Patty, what, crabs? But wait, Mr. Krabs is a crab. Imagine a restaurant where humans sold human burgers with real human flesh in them, but that's not the most famous theory about it now anyway. Let's walk through the one which is. Remember in Tier 3 we discussed the Alex Bale video in which he tackles multiple bikini bottom mysteries. I remember carefully scripting that part to not give away too much because I knew this entry is on the way, and then things just would have sounded repetitive right now had I said it all back then. So in the end of that Alex Bale video, one of those mysteries that he discusses is actually the unknown Krabby Patty ingredient. Remember the whale that Mr. Krabs killed, which he proves that was... With a few supportive points like the easy access that Mr. Krabs has to all the Krabby Patty ingredients, and that how common it is in Bikini Bottom to buy and sell actual seafood, he tries to prove how the secret ingredient in the Krabby Patty is actually that whale's carcass. Yeah, so the whale that is Pearl's mother. In other words, if that's true, Bikini Bottom citizens bite onto Pearl's mom's dead meat every time they hog onto a Krabby Patty. Even Pearl herself. So now you might say, if that is true, one day when Mr. Krabs will run out of the, there will be no more Krabby Patty, right? Well, as a big finish, in the very end, Alex also adds that Mr. Krabs, being the miser kind that he is, of course didn't just adopt Pearl after mother only out of kindness. Because one day, sooner or later, when he sure is going to need the whale meat that's been making Krabby Patty, then, although some might say that it's a bit of a stretch because the producers of the show had already stated that it's a vegan patty. But Alex Bale goes on to debunk even their claim as well. And come on man, it's Alex Bale we're talking about. Show's producer. What do they know? And despite, do we have anything else to hold on to? Like, what do you guys think is the secret ingredient? I know what I thought for the longest time. I thought Krabby Patty has Krabby. Yeah, that Pokemon. That's how clueless we are with this. Plankton's curiosity indeed is totally understandable. Give Jellyfish Fields a Chance was the finale. Even if you haven't seen the season 7 episode SpongeBob's Last Stand, when you hear this song,
we are trying to say is give Jellyfish Fields a chance.
You might realize its resemblance to
all we are saying is give peace a chance. That's all we're saying.
As it's a little parody of the famous John Lennon song that's to protest against war. Just as SpongeBob and Patrick's song is protesting against the Shelly Superhighway going through Jellyfish Fields. Yeah, Jellyfish Fields, not strawberry. In fact, the harmonica sounds almost identical to the one in the Beatles song. And Patrick dons a similar look to Lennon during the final scene of the song as well. So much Beatles in this one, yeah? Loving it. But that is not the only reason why it is here, as you might have noticed in the name of the entry. Because apparently this episode was one of the couple of attempts that had been made to have the series finish with a finale. But well, looks like the show is too big to just end like that. This video here by Channel Federator, however, sure does end with this fact. The 107th entry on a list of 107 SpongeBob facts that he talks about in this video. Let's have a quick look.
Number 107. The show has already had 2 series finales. The first movie was meant to be the grand finale of SpongeBob SquarePants, but the network couldn't let it go. Then the SpongeBob's Last Stand special was going to mark the end of the series, but the network couldn't let it go. As of right now, the network still can't let it go.
Well, that's a nice name for the final episode, by the way.
There is no reason for this episode to exist, other than nausea fuel.
Mr. Enter. Mr. Enter, or now known as the mysterious Mr. Enter, is a content creator, author, artist who is probably best known for being a YouTube critic for his unique roast of cartoons in general, a bunch of which are on SpongeBob. And he's here in the Iceberg not only because of the entertainment quality of the videos, but for how he likes to go a bit over the top when putting his thoughts on the table. I watched both his SpongeBob related and other videos, and I must say, over the top.
Without the disgusting visual gimmicks, this episode has no legs to stand on. It wants to gross you out, and if it doesn't, it'll only end up boring you. There is no reason for this episode to exist, other than nausea fuel. It's an excuse to be as gross as possible, and a flimsy excuse at that. I don't know who would be vile enough, repulsive enough, disgusting enough to think that this would be a good idea, and then to actually make a goddamn episode about it? Who wrote this? 3? This episode had 3 writers. How is that possible? How did 3 professional level writers come forth with this crap when a 5-year-old would know better and throw it in the trash? These 3 do not deserve to have jobs. They deserve to be fired immediately and blacklisted. There's putting no effort into something, and then there's putting effort into making something as utterly horrible as possible.
Yeah. Of course, it's just for some good old internet fun, so be sure to check him out if you haven't already.
She doesn't like to talk about it.
Mrs. Puff is a widow. This is not directly said, but most certainly indirectly indicated, just like many other mysteries in the show. And although Alex Bale may not agree,
her husband is still alive! Woo!
Let's see what it is about at least. In the season 2 episode Trusty Love, the first episode where Mr. Krabs falls in love with something besides money, that something, or rather someone, is Mrs. Puff. When Mr. Krabs hears the name of Mrs. Puff for the first time, no, he doesn't go all Mandark's love theme for Didi over her. He rather gets sad to hear the title Mrs.
Mrs. Puff? Oh, she's married.
Understandable. However, SpongeBob quickly relieves Mr. Krabs by saying that she is single.
Oh no, Mr. Krabs, she's single.
Which sounds great, and SpongeBob certainly looks happy to let Mr. Krabs know that. Obviously confused, Mr. Krabs then wonders what's Mrs. all about in that case.
Then what happened to Mr. Puff?
Who is her husband? Where is he? Is he rich? To which SpongeBob responds,
she doesn't like to talk about it.
She doesn't like to talk about it. After which we get to see this. Now there are many such random things in the show, and what's crazy to me is that how characters say these spontaneous things out of the blue and the other character immediately understands it like, yeah, it's very obvious. Well, clearly not so, because we humans don't know what this should exactly mean. But it's theorized that this out of the context scene is shown as a nice way to say that her husband is no more. Okay, well, something that brings the context into this is the thought that perhaps
Mr. Puff
was killed and made into a light bulb. Therefore, also notice something. Miss Krabs asks,
what happened to Mr. Puff?
What happened to Mr. Puff? He could have been made to ask anything else, like where is Mr. Puff or who is Mr. Puff, you know, so on and so forth. But he particularly asked,
what happened to Mr. Puff?
Followed by, should that mean that this is what's happened to Mr. Puff? Makes sense? Yeah? No? I guess? Anyways, this can also be linked to the SpongeBob movie where how a fish was made into a light bulb, firstly meaning that it is possible that Mrs. Puff's husband would have met the same fate, as apparently it seems as it is a thing for fishes to be turned into light bulbs in Bikini Bottom, and also meaning that maybe that was Mr. Puff himself. Squidward becomes a snail. This can either sound like something downright silly to you or something that makes perfect sense. So in the season 1 episode I Was a Teenage Gary, Squidward accidentally injects the syringe of snail plasma into SpongeBob, rather than Gary, as it was meant to improve Gary's poor health and not to turn SpongeBob into a snail. Because that's exactly what happens a while later when Squidward accidentally gets injected by the syringe as well. He turns into a snail too. Only difference is that we don't see him becoming a snail. Okay, so does that mean it's a deleted scene? Nonsensical. And that's what many people say. Others, on the other hand, are intrigued by the fact that the transition that is used from this scene to this scene isn't the usual bubble transition. Rather, we get this comparatively lazier shift between the scenes, which cuts to the Squidward already being a snail.
Meow, 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 meow.
Meow, 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 meow.
Now, either this is actually a case of a deleted scene or a less used transition used at the perfectly wrong timing. And that too could further mean that either that was clearly a choice of transition that shouldn't have been made in such a scene where a cut mattered so much and this confusion was completely unforeseen, or it was indeed foreseen that the cut would matter this much and the makers still kept the transition just to intrigue all this interest into fans to initiate this wild goose chase for some reason. Yeah, weird, I know, but if true, it completely fulfilled the purpose.
Any porn in the store?
Any porn in the store? In the previous tier, we talked about midlife crustacean, right? The season 3 episode in which Mr. Krabs finds the worst possible way to deal with his midlife crisis by joining the fun activities that SpongeBob and Patrick execute during the night.
Feeling that, feeling it, 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 feeling it.
Although, as we discussed, the episode is banned due to the panty raid that comes in the end. There is another little thing in the middle of the episode that might also have contributed into the ban. Well, actually not sure, but see this and be the judge.
Hello, gang. SpongeBob's back.
Let's party! Any porn in the store?
Now what did he say there?
Any porn in the store?
Fans have always been confused. Many think it's any party in the store. Some say any port in the storm, like, you know, port, storm. Mr. Krabs was a pirate, so it makes sense he using such words in his day-to-day life. And obviously more than any other word in the sentence, we're of course most concerned with. Do you think he said what it seems as he's saying? No way. Well, nobody knows for sure anyway, so let's imagine, because why not? And actually, if you notice, looks like even Mr. Krabs is confused about what he just said right after saying it. So who are we to say anything about it anyway? A day with SpongeBob. A day with SpongeBob SquarePants in a nutshell seems as just a rumor, as it always has been. A rumor that received more attention than a rumor could ever wish for. It all started with this Amazon webpage about this so-called movie, which displayed a release date of it, a description about the storyline, a cover which shouts SpongeBob in each and every pixel of it. And after the release date, if nothing else, we sure got this review over here. I mean, dude, what did you watch? Because the movie didn't come out on the promised date, leading to a branching chain of investigatory efforts that are too much to put all in this Iceberg video, where we're expected to mainly go over the crux of the topic. But no matter what went into this, despite the paramount research work it took by the folks, the sleuthing, the groups, the hopeless attempts, the phone calls for almost 10 long years from the fans and people determined over the internet to find anything related to this thing, nothing was ever found. Pretty much like Saki Sonobashi, something that now seems like wasn't ever there, but took so much of hit and error that despite knowing that we're at the point where we'll be happy with just anything, even fan media like reenactment of sorts, as it feels like we deserve that for all the hours we poured into it, right? Just to justify the trouble we went through for it. Like how I think I better justify the delay in this video that this entry caused by using the original super long script written during the research into this movie and making it into a separate dedicated video, as I'm surely skipping a lot of it in order to give you a glimpse. But for now, this is basically all there is to it. In a nutshell, a day with SpongeBob SquarePants that never came.
You got the nose wrong.
Squidward is talented. I hope it doesn't start sounding like a pattern where we're simply theorizing some bikini bottom creature being smart or whatnot, handpicking one underwater character at random, tagging few instances from the show on it, and coming up with unpredictable qualities in them, just for some thrill. Well, don't worry, as far as this iceberg is concerned, this is the last entry like this, and one that you might actually believe, like fans mostly do. believe that Squidward is talented. Let's take a couple of examples and have a closer look. In the season 2 episode Artist Unknown, it's theorized that although Squidward may not clearly be as good of an artist as SpongeBob at first, but certainly carries certain qualities that an artist in a real world may do. Underrated, misunderstood, unnoticed genius of an artist, with attributes like adhering to the basics even when trying out fancy stuff to keep simplicity as the soul of his work, being nervous in competitions, and being unable to come out well at all when being stared down upon. But at the same time being able to perform much better when intrigued by a meaningful reason, turning one's anguish into art beyond unthinkable skill just to achieve a purpose. How many great thinkers of the world have been able to do in the human history after being pushed to the edge by their miseries, having their passion help turn their unfortunate events into impressive results, utilizing hardships to their advantage, bringing hope to humankind just by being themselves. Now for another example, this time from the season 1, in the beginning of the episode Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost, we clearly see how Squidward this time has been shown with the best of its work right at the beginning. We talk about the sculpture, the painting, etc. More interestingly though, as opposed to what SpongeBob drew in most of the previously discussed episode, Squidward drew himself. Nothing but Squidward all around is what we see. And that's where this theory really takes its shape. Maybe Squidward is a great artist, as we can surely see here, but with a couple of issues. For starters, Squidward is clearly able to draw, paint, shape himself very well. And to do the same with other things, he seems to need a bit of a push. So we could see it as he specializes in self-portraits like many artists around the real world specialize. That's what they do best, and they do it without any fear of being judged, because that is what they like, that is what they are like. And when you do what you like, everything else pretty much loses the ability to affect you much. Maybe that's how Squidward is able to deal with all the negativity by just making self-portraits, the stuff he likes. Secondly, Squidward is able to draw the cartoon world just fine and not the real world, unless he's been triggered, of course. And SpongeBob, on the other hand, is quite the opposite of this. You might say somehow we only ever get to see SpongeBob making the real world figures and not the bikini bottom graphics, so we can't really say that he might be good at that as well. Unless there is an episode where we saw SpongeBob struggling with cartoon drawing. Yeah, because there actually is one. If you remember in the season 2 episode Frankendoodle, SpongeBob couldn't draw himself, so he can draw this, and whatnot, but not this? Interesting. The answer to this may be a little enlightening, because it's perhaps possible that in their world the concept of what's difficult and what's easy is quite the opposite. As in the world of Bikini Bottom, they can draw us humans easily and not themselves, like how we can draw cartoonish figures relatively much easily than ourselves and the real world around us, if you see what I'm saying. Okay, and I promise this is the last one. In the season 7 episode, The Masterpiece, what we see here is Squidward making an art that represents something other than himself. This is where it also makes us think about all this from a whole new angle, because it's maybe a case where the art itself becomes a problem for the artist. As so far as we've seen in the show, with how Squidward mostly is like, he's clearly repulsive to the ones around him. People seem to dislike him. They at least don't love him half as much as they might be willing to love SpongeBob, as just like people we may dislike in our lives, the Bikini Bottom characters dislike Squidward's behavior, how he sounds, how he appears to be. How he appears to be is how these arts appear to be. What the theory tries to say is that these arts remind people of Squidward, something that they don't think is lovable, and so gets passed around by people without a second thought. The image of Squidward's face stands tall between the viewer and the art, like you're more likely to like a painting of someone you love than the one of someone you dislike. Even if the latter is a better painting, if only Squidward would try making something other than himself more often, then it might get noticed. But then again, why should he? As an artist can make anything he or she wants, so it's not a mistake. At best, we can only call it a reason, not a fault. And these are our theories, and we have no way to tell Squidward what he can do to fix it. And even if we could, why would we? As he is doing what he loves, making stuff for himself. Something any true artist should be allowed to do. So basically, everyone. So Squidward shall forever be stuck in the notion of not being good enough, thanks to the habit that he can't get rid of, thanks to the perception of people that people can't get rid of, and thanks to the innate nature of judging an art, not by the nuances, but by the overall look of it.
I don't even have a computer.
I don't even have a computer. Let's kick things off with one of the oddest SpongeBob related clips you're ever likely to stumble upon. What does the title suggest to you? SpongeBob whining about a computer? That'd be incorrect. SpongeBob doesn't say that wanting a computer, but pleading to be let go when being accused of watching inappropriate kid stuff. Basically, child pornography. This is a clip that comes from the Saturday TV Funhouse segment of NBC's Saturday Night Live, a section of the show that featured what the Saturday Night Live host would announce as a cartoon by Robert Smigel between the host segments, followed by a short parody of various educational films and cartoons. This one is from the 67th Funhouse episode that appeared in the middle of the 14th episode of season 28 of Saturday Night Live. That was on Miss Dynamite on March 8, 2003. The recurring superhero sketch from the series called Ex-Presidents appear in the short named Iraq 2003, in which the members of the superhero group
George Bush, Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford
plan to make their own little cartoon on Iraq after being influenced from the pro-war clips like the controversial Bugs Bunny Nips the Nips and a Grey Pape cartoon which promoted the invasion of Grenada. They ask none other than SpongeBob to act for it, but midway SpongeBob stops to accept that he isn't comfortable doing it as it seems a bit racist to him, which is, by the way, Tom Kenny voicing it all, mind you. When SpongeBob goes on questioning the script, he gets countered by the director, and when he's about to leave, this happens.
I declare code yellow. Hold him for questioning. Check his hard drive for child.
I don't even have a computer.
That's it. That's why the entry is here, I guess. Yeah, after this, well, the Powerpuff Girls come in to save SpongeBob, which by the way doesn't go so well either, but those few seconds
I don't even have a computer.
are why we've assembled here for now. SpongeBob being accused of watching child pornography while being voiced by Tom Kenny. I also learned about the apparent fact that this is the shot because of which Tom Kenny was banned from voicing SpongeBob outside of the show, which is bizarre. And when it comes to the accusation of SpongeBob being into all that stuff, well, that of course can't be true.
I was just looking for the sports channel, Gary.
Okay, well, Bikini Bottom's production control room and regulatory houses need some inspection, it seems.
Well, why don't you replace it yourself?
Stephen Hillenburg's views on ships. Stephen Hillenburg seemed to have a clear vision about what he wanted SpongeBob SquarePants to become and remain without ever losing the essence. We got an idea about that already by now, as in the very first year itself, we saw how he apparently wanted to stay away from any spin-offs. Contaminating the nature of the characters in the show wasn't what he was after in any way. And similarly, he seemed to be also particular about shipping and all, which is basically a fan-forced romance between two characters in a show or movie or series, where it's not originally shown, but to the followers it seems like a hell of an idea. And then they're like, they didn't give it to us, so we're gonna make it. Like a love relationship. Shipping, you see. It's one of the terms in the glossary of fandom jargon, fan speak, so to speak. And then this sort of became a thing of its own, especially in these internet times, of course, where nobody can stop such fan lore, plots being cooked up and romance being dreamt of by the fans, and so it all finds its own way to come out. To the point that now we as fans, thanks to social media, have this sort of superpower to make the show whatever we want, all through such theories or fan art, and see the permuted version of a show altered to our desires, kind of like a fully customizable food order. But regardless of the fan theories and what certain sources might say, Steve wasn't into it all that much. His idea for the show was pretty clear from the very start, as it seems as he thought that such things might mess up with the basic flavor of the series for him. As a filmmaker, he knew that each character had a purpose in the series which he didn't want to play around with. Everything is in SpongeBob's head after SpongeBob. You might have watched me talking about various Pokemon fan theories on this channel, because there are a bunch of weird ones. One eerie one which I haven't talked about in here yet on a long video but mentioned in a short one I guess, is that all of the show is in Ash's own thoughts. Nothing is really taking place, relating that to no one ever aging, Ash forgetting things about his past, so on and so forth. It's not a Pokemon video, I know, but that was a convenient example there in order to explain how sometimes a fan theory happens to be solving a lot many issues with the series in question. So somebody applied that same in-the-head logic to SpongeBob as well, with clever reasoning. You see, in the season 5 episode Spongehenge that we talked about in the first year itself, we found out how in the end the Bikini Bottom is no more when SpongeBob eventually manages to return to it, somehow saving itself from the jellyfishes. As per which there can't be more of SpongeBob adventures in Bikini Bottom. Yeah, there shouldn't be more episodes then. That should be the end. The show should not just continue as nothing happened, unless the show is showing some flashback or something that's just happening in the dream, you know, because that's what this theory is saying. The show actually did end as it was apparently planned to be, like we discussed, and everything that happened and is still happening after that is just in the thoughts of SpongeBob. SpongeBob is simply dreaming of the good times and imagining the sweet life sitting somewhere in his wasted and forsaken undertown that once saw the sponges, shenanigans and laughter day in and night out.
Feeling it, 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 feeling it.
Whatever we've been seeing after Spongehenge episode, it's all in SpongeBob's head. And we are in SpongeBob's head watching all that's inside SpongeBob's head. Is that why it's been a little spongy in here? So it must be all thoughts now. That's quite depressing. Don't worry, it's just another theory. Even if it's not a forced one and has sprouted out of an actual episode where the makers themselves showed us how Bikini Bottom is all gone, it is still possible that the producers of the show can come back one day and say that this in-the-head theory is just... But until then, and just in case it is not, we must agree that SpongeBob is still quite optimistic, imagining all these fun thoughts in a dark and done place that once was a happy and happening Bikini Bottom.
Security system takes control.
Guy rages at SpongeBob episode. As the title suggests, this is about a guy who raged at SpongeBob in a YouTube video. He raged so hard that it eventually became a meme. The original video by Geek Ultimatum Network is privated now, so can't really show you that, sorry. But hey, it didn't become a meme until the Bubble Poppin' Boys made a review video about it. But even that is privated now, so can't even show you that as well, I'm sorry. But anyways, that review was when internet caught wind of it, and when the words you see on the screen right now received their re-edits, reposts of sorts in various forms, and it turned out to be exploitable enough to most of all in the community. Let me take you through the backstory a little here. In the original video, Geek Ultimatum Network talks about the season 5 episode Good Neighbors as part of his list of worst SpongeBob episodes, and somehow for this episode he happens to go real hard on it, saying how he hates that episode for being so unfair for Squidward, and well, somehow audience just got stuck with it. One wouldn't have guessed that, right? Yeah, because it's really one of the examples of such a meme that drifts much far away from the source which brought that very media into existence. Just like Wang mentions in his NEDM video.
Its journey would lead to a meme that became so disconnected from the source material that some people have no idea about its grim origins.
Fans may not remember it being about Good Neighbors. They may not even recall Geek Ultimatum Network or even Bubble Poppin' Boys for that matter. But legacy lives on in form of these unforgettable lines that received the treatment that they did.
Security system takes control of Squidward's house and begins attacking the city, leaving the mayor to give Squidward community service for the damage he caused, even though SpongeBob and Patrick were in his house the whole time and were responsible for everything. Yeah! This episode.
So, yeah.
You actually recognized us this time.
Patrick's parents change. We all love Patrick, right? Yeah, ever wanted to meet his parents? Well, if you did, then you would have to meet not 2 but 4 people. Okay, don't get me wrong, I said that cause these 2 definitely are not them. This is Patrick's parents designed from the show. We got a glimpse at them back in Tier 3 while discussing his family tree. And this right here, friends, is their design in the Patrick Star show. Why is that, you might wonder? Just like the Twitter account CartoonFan18 did and asked Vincent Waller about it, to which he got this response from him. Cecil and Bunny, they are his mom and dad. We felt the original iterations of the characters. While they worked for that episode, they were boring as characters. They were not entertaining or fun. These 2 are so much more fun, I can't wait till you get to meet them. So unlike in the case of King Neptune or Princess Mindy, the reason is no firewall or anything, but simply that the makers found the design a bit boring. Despite it being a better or worse choice, some fans do also care about the reason for the redesign. They do find it nice to have a show-related logic behind things that change so drastically, rather than the reason flatly being that the design was not good enough in someone's opinion. Some, on the other hand, seem to take it all easy with the whole thing, not worrying much about the reasoning behind every twist and turn in the show. So, yeah. Home parody. Yeah, we should expect all this now, I guess. Let's talk about it. I'm sure if you made it this far, you'd have an idea of what we're talking about here. Or at least I hope that it's nothing new to you how there exists parodies of popular media in adult industry, so long as the show or series in question is known well enough. For SpongeBob, the one I found mentioned more often than not is a parody known as SpongeBob Square Nuts. So yeah. What? That's all? I mean, you want me to review it for you now? Go suit yourself if you wish to. So, it's a 2013 video directed by Leroy Myers, cast including SpongeBob SquarePants, played by Anthony Rosano, and Sandy, of course, played by Raylene Joy. Yeah, so okay, can we move on now? Let's.
Interesting.
Patrick has a foot fetish. This is a theory where Patrick is deemed to have a foot fetish. One episode we can tell it from was featured in the very first tale itself, in which a snip of an episode from season 6 called The Splinter was shown, where the pus out of SpongeBob's injured thumb showers all over Mr. Krabs. Before that, Dr. Patrick, yes, Dr. Patrick, 2 words that just sound so wrong when said together, comes for the rescue. Oh god. Trying to help SpongeBob Splinter, mostly just grossing the audience out. In fact, that's what Mr. Enter was talking about in this entry from last year.
There is no reason for this episode to exist, other than nausea fuel.
One thing he does in this episode, though, for a few seconds, is this.
Interesting.
Looks like Patrick's got it bad if he's got it. But this theory hasn't just got this one foot to stand on, pun intended. There is another one, way back from the season 2 episode, the Fry Cook Games. During the final challenge of the 21st annual Fry Cook Games,
Fun wrestling.
Patrick apparently uses one of his special moves, which is, let's watch.
This is personal.
Now some say it's mainly cause that was SpongeBob's weakness, some hold it for a reason to use in this theory, some say that was way back in 2002, so foot fetish reference, no way, those times were innocent. Some say foot fetish has been around forever, so once again, as always, it's what you make of it. If you ask me, well, I can still buy Patrick using it as one of his moves in the Fry Cook Games, but what was the reason for Patrick to do this to SpongeBob's foot in the Splinter episode when the Splinter was in SpongeBob's right-hand thumb?
I didn't realize you were a doctor!
Stay on me, cookie dough!
Patchy is insane. You see, in a crazy show like SpongeBob, it's not uncommon to come across some crazy characters. And sometimes not just crazy looking or crazy acting, also really crazy, which as per this theory is the case with Patchy. Yeah, this pirate guy, who's one of the supporting characters in the show. Well, quite boldly, the OP of this hypothesis states that Patchy is delusional and dreamy and dead. And also that his pet parrot Potty doesn't even exist. Yeah, right, it would be best, I guess, if I just read this thing out. Here we go. In my theory, I believe or think that all episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants could all be played out in Patchy the Pirate's head. You all know Patchy the Pirate, a man dressed in a pirate out, wishing one day to meet SpongeBob in person. But what if in reality he's just more of a lonely man in some sort of world he created? Sure, you might ask, how would that all possibly work out? I think there could be a few disabilities from him, but I'll talk more about that later. Do you remember all the times he's been on the show with excitement as he enters and how he talks about his desperate need to meet SpongeBob? Well, what if he actually is just making up this sponge character to calm him down? You've seen him become angry towards his parrot a lot, or if nothing goes right, that could be a possibility of him in a mental crazy state. He could have made SpongeBob and all of the other characters in his head to keep him somewhat sane, Remember the SpongeBob Christmas episode of season 2? Do you also remember one of the very last scenes with Patchy in it, with the ship hat and with SpongeBob and Patrick on the ship? He was telling a story as they were in it. So what if he actually plays out all episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants as puppet shows for his entertainment? In shows where he is in it, he's always the one telling the story. Everything could be all in his head. Okay, now think back to the episode where he actually was in a professional place and had celebrities there. Do you remember the part where he became angry or crazy when SpongeBob didn't appear on stage to greet the excited pirate? Because that's all in his head. The scene where he goes underwater and finally meets SpongeBob is the scene in reality when he actually dies. He died from a possibility of drowning, knowing in most episodes where he doesn't even touch water or leave his house. He could have never had swimming lessons or even felt the ocean water between his fingers, because it could be a situation where his parents in his childhood never took him anywhere close to water. You all might ask, but how is he still alive in other episodes? I actually have a few reasons. My first reason is that all of the episodes is in no specific order. In most, or all, don't yell at me if I'm incorrect, episodes, there is usually a problem but is quickly solved around the end of the 15 minutes or the end of the episode. My second reason is that there could be a big circumstance that he thinks he's still alive. One of the more recent episodes is a SpongeBob Christmas. He's not in human form. Yeah, I know all of the characters were in clayish form and not their animated cartoon style they usually are. But he could be thinking he's still alive and roaming. Think of it from that episode. First off, he's at the North Pole and isn't wearing a lot, or any big coats or heavy boots to keep him from the cold. Yes, he does say that he's cold and hungry throughout the episode, but it could be him trying to still believe he's alive. He also says he's hungry, but I don't recall ghosts ever eating like humans ever. Secondly, as he hits the fork in the road, literally, he tumbles and swirls around, falling and eventually hits the ground, still in the car. Surely he should be dead. But he even says that he, surprisingly, has not scratches on him. That's because he's already dead. I like this cherry on top in the comment below. That's all dope and dark, but looks out of place in this video. I mean, we just talked about SpongeBob being in SpongeBob's head, and now it's inside Patchy's head as well. Interesting.
We'll get you a date.
Mr. Krabs is a sugar daddy. This is a theory which, as the name suggests that Mr. Krabs, the owner of Krabby Patty, is also the sugar daddy of Pearl. And just like many theories, I understand this may sound too dumb at first, but moving on just for the sake of it, let's see what it is after all about. Because hey, it's SpongeBob SquarePants, the show in which we got to see this. So could this as well really be? Is it possible? I mean, since anything is, this must be too. And there are points that support and oppose this thing presented by people who are in favor and against this theory, respectively. Let us go over the main points that make them think the way they think. Mr. Krabs indeed has plenty of cash to spare to be able to be Pearl's sugar daddy. Mr. Krabs also has plenty of penny pinching that would keep him from dispensing that spare cash like that. Pearl calls Mr. Krabs daddy, which might mean sugar daddy and not daddy. It indeed is just daddy and we're just in mood to make things up. Pearl sure likes to spend a lot of money and keep asking for it from Mr. Krabs. Well, Pearl just likes to shop like all teenagers and she simply asks for money from Mr. Krabs for him being his father. We don't see Mr. Krabs related to any other female other than the dates he's been to with Mrs. Puff, so he might be just that. But then why Mr. Krabs wanted someone to go along with Pearl to the prom? Mr. Krabs is old enough to be called a sugar daddy. Pearl is too young to have one. So yeah, what do you think?
I'll take you.
It's the voice of Plankton.
Victorious, the 2010 sitcom, has an episode where this paparazzi thinks that Erwin Sikowitz, played by Eric Langer, is the voice of Plankton. Of course, that's not true. Plankton is voiced by Doug Lawrence. But let's check this out.
Whoa! It's the voice of Plankton!
Some fans say that they also heard a lot of Plankton in his voice even before this episode aired, presenting it as a joke, which kind of further confused some fans into it. But well, audience eventually understood that it's just a coincidence and the character Erwin just sounded a lot like Plankton. Nonetheless, this was interesting. The scene is funny too.
Let's get a shot of Plankton with Tori.
Especially when Erwin plays along.
Aaron, I must have the secret formula for the Krabby Patty.
I bared my soul to you.
SpongeBob Adult Party. Remember Ren and Stimpy from the 1991 The Ren and Stimpy Show? Then you might also know about the adult-themed 2-season revival animated series on it from 2003, Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon, which was an adult-themed series. Okay, why is that important? Well, there was a plan of having the same kind of thing for SpongeBob back in 2003, a suggestion that had come from Spike TV, which Stephen Hillenburg had to provide a refusal for, and so it never happened. In fact, Ren and Stimpy has been the only cartoon that received such an adult spin-off. It just tickles me to imagine what all limits that show would have crossed had it been made. This Iceberg would have had a few more entries, that's for sure.
This is gold in the form of
Chum ingredients. Chum ingredients. Ingredients of chum. First of all, chum, by the way, is the main ingredient in almost every item that Plankton decides to keep in his restaurant called the Chum Bucket. Yeah, the restaurant really justifies the name there. Now one might wonder, what is the ingredient of this signature ingredient? Is it the same that it is in our real world, which fishermen use as a bait for fishes, which is just more fishes? Yeah, that seems to be the case with Plankton's chum as well, as we can kinda sorta see at times in the series. But for some reason, the chum that is a successful bait in our real life seems to attract no customer in Bikini Bottom. So that's questionable. But since their world has many a time proved to be working in a different way than ours, like in the last entry of the previous day, then, well, we shouldn't be surprised. And so if that chum, just like our chum, is made up of fishes, where does Plankton get it from? Ever since first appearing in the season 5 episode Friend or Foe, this has been a constant query from the fans. Although much like Krabby Patty, the main ingredient of chum is a mystery, the show has been kind enough to have the audience in on a few of the other ingredients. Like in the season 3 episode Spongeicus, we get to know that it has
some jellyfish squeezings, whale blubber, seahorse snout, and a sprinkle of anchorage.
And in the season 9 episode Jailbreak,
cultured fungus growth medium,
basically an old sock,
subtropical vegetal matter,
in other words a banana peel,
organic filler,
a bucket of trash.
Hey you, come here. Blow. Live bacterial culture.
A recently used napkin. I understand this might be getting unbearably pathetic. Let's quickly finish it off by mentioning that Plankton puts these ingredients in a prison toilet, shuts the lid, flushes it, in order to mix them all together. It wasn't until season 6 episode Krabby Chronicle when the authorities find out that the chum is made up of fish, which results in the Plankton's chum bucket getting shut out. This finally reveals how Plankton had been getting the Bikini Bottom citizens to engage into indirect cannibalism without their knowledge of it. But is that all there is to it? Or something more going on which we don't get to see, yet it's seeing us? As a matter of fact, going back to Friend or Foe, a pinch of chum was originally a part of the burger recipe that Plankton made as a kid along with Mr. Krabs when they were friends. That's in fact where things started falling apart between both of them, as that burger, which originally had chum in it, poisoned the old man Jenkins, resulting into Mr. Krabs and Plankton to accuse each other of the contamination that caused the poisoning, and that's how friends turn into foes. You see how it goes? Mr. Krabs presumably got rid of chum from his Krabby Patty recipe. Plankton, on the other hand, kept the chum and came up with... yeah. Well, going by how things are working out for them, maybe we know what caused the Krabby Patty prototype burger to be poisonous. Again raising the question on the contents of this thing called chum, making it about as intriguing of a mystery as the Krabby Patty.
Tell Sandy I love her.
Tell Sandy I love her. To end this tear up and tear up the script, here's an interesting little bit. Remember we talked about Stephen Hillenburg not being into shipping and all much. Additionally, it's been said that he particularly made clear that SpongeBob and Sandy are just good friends, with no love-related interest between them. As perhaps he might have noticed that Sandy, being one of SpongeBob's best friends and being a female, could be linked with SpongeBob in such a way. So he just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that it's all platonic there. There were some angles he just wanted to stay clear of. But once in a while, fans come across things that make them imagine things, stuff that fuel this fan fiction a bit, like in the SpongeBob mobile game. No, we don't see both SpongeBob and Sandy together, but get to hear this special message of SpongeBob as he dies.
Tell Sandy I love her.
What more would a sponge shipper want?
Tell Sandy I love her.
He's probably saying that in an innocent, friendly way, but
Tell Sandy I love her.
we can do with that.
Tell Sandy I love her.
Christmas who?
SpongeBob crush on Sandy in books. Stephen Hillenburg intended Sandy to be a strong girl character who could be that one good female friend in SpongeBob's life. Good female friend, he said, and didn't want to imply any love interest in there. Regardless, time and again, we stumble upon signs to signify that if not Sandy, but SpongeBob might have a minor crush on Sandy, maybe without even knowing about it. We shouldn't be surprised, you know, it's SpongeBob.
Christmas who?
He very well may have feelings for someone inside, and it just lives through it, knowing nothing of what it's all about that it's going through. And this right here is not just based off the fan theories and all, but also according to a book by David Lehman called SpongeBob's Survival Guide, in which there is a section called Surviving a Secret Crush, with tactics to survive a secret crush, suggesting things like act normally in front of your crush, don't giggle, don't go weak in the knees. So far so good. But hey, wait, it also mentions to be careful of not fogging up your bubble helmet. Okay, followed by a mention of tree dome. So, you know, the section clearly points towards someone in particular here. Any guesses? Allegedly, there is also a book that apparently while introducing SpongeBob ends with the sentence, and he has a crush on Sandy Cheeks. Well, that's pretty direct, ain't it? But about this particular book, that's all I know, without any other detail, not even the name of the book. So who knows? If you know, just let me know. Also, not to mention, there are many such books that can inform the uninitiated reader that SpongeBob and Sandy are like together, along with few of the misconceptions. And if you keep reading such SpongeBob books, especially unofficial ones, you'll realize how much different they are from the actual show. Fans suspect that this is maybe because the writers of those books are not necessarily familiar with everything about the storyline and characters, like how inexistent romance actually is between SpongeBob and Sandy in the actual cartoon. Or perhaps they simply presume some things or make stuff up, like linking the main male character in the show with his closest female friend, how usually things are thought to be in movies and all, you know, sort of suppositions, pretty much like how we've been theorizing things. Some people argue that maybe Sandy too has a crush on him, but since that's not the topic here, rather than talking about it, let's just have a quick poll. Yeah, well anyways, there you have it, another reference to Spandy, a name which is given by the fans to this spongy Sandy shipping. Squidina in Elegy SpongeBob. Remember her? She is Squidina, Patrick's adopted sister according to the Patrikios show. Name sounds convenient, right? You'd never confuse her for Squidward's sister instead. Oh wait, they made sure she has a last name Star? Well thanks, that should come handy. Or maybe she is the only one who's named right, as she's the only character who's a squid and has squid in her name as well. Rest all are well not. And let's not confuse her with Cumbia, one who Squidward went on date with. You might wonder why I said according to the Patrick Star show there. That is cause she also made a couple of appearances in the original SpongeBob series, but was never really introduced as Patrick's sister, or maybe wasn't yet planned to be. And then I guess we saw her in the season 23 episode Goofy Newbie as a waitress at the Goofy Goober ice cream party boat. Well, it looks and sounds like her for sure. I mean, Alex Bale too said so.
Isn't that Patrick's sister?
Although she didn't seem to recognize Patrick, we can clearly assume that she might have had to pretend that she doesn't know him in fear of being kicked out of the job. Or maybe she just forgot about Patrick due to being indoctrinated by Goofy Goober. I mean, Alex Bale too said so. So in a way, we had already met Patrick's stepsister without knowing just that. That's cool. Let's not blame ourselves when Patrick himself didn't notice her. Well, let's not even be surprised. SpongeBob movie game on PC. We talked about a couple of SpongeBob games in the very first year, and here we are again. Cause if you keep digging into SpongeBob games, you'll know it's a rabbit hole in itself, reaching way beyond the mainstream ones that everybody mostly talks about. Beyond side-scrollers and 3D platformers we're well familiar with, the world seems to have forgotten completely about these SpongeBob computer games. Yes, computer games, with zero resemblance to their console counterparts we looked at earlier. Other than nostalgically valuable, you'll actually find them all to be quite entertaining as well. That is in case you're somehow able to get these games to work now, as they are not always compatible with the current versions of the operating systems we're all on these days. That being said, they mean childhood to many SpongeBob fans and gamers. Out of all of the PC SpongeBob games, like the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game, Operation Krabby Patty, Employee of the Month, Battle for Bikini Bottom, Tooncast Studio, Clash of Trident, Lights Camera Pants, Creature from the Krusty Krab Nighty Nightmare, and God knows if there are more. The one that this entry talks about is this particular PC game of SpongeBob that was made on the movie, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game for computer. Unlike the one you might have played on PlayStation 2 or Game Boy Advance, it's point and click. Although less known than the mainstream SpongeBob games, you can very well find full walkthroughs of not just this, but pretty much all of the other PC games we mentioned on YouTube itself. Of course, along with heartwarming comments from friends across the globe who feel the same.
Your kind isn't allowed.
You don't allow your kind here. There have been various discussions about all kinds of racist remarks in SpongeBob, some direct, some not so. One that you're likely to come across more often than not comes from the Season 2 episode Squidward, in which Squidward plans to move to Tentacle Acres, a place where octopuses looking for peace come to reside, away from the annoying intrusions from, say, starfishes and sea sponges. Okay, so right off the bat, one thing's for sure, that in an episode with such a plot, we're likely to find something or the other which very well could be seen as discrimination. And probably the writers didn't even notice it themselves and let this scene be in the episode, which they had no clue would be pointed out by many as an act of racism. Have a look.
We're sorry, but your kind isn't allowed here.
So is Squidward racist or not? Well, sure, if a gated area is reserved for a particular species, pretty much like humans not allowing dogs in a particular place, etc. But that ain't racism, maybe speciesism. Maybe let's move on. SpongeBob outro scared kids. I remember an old short video of mine in which I mentioned how the Lavender Town music from the Pokemon game would lead kids to just like the ability of making us feel happy or sad, the ever so mystical music theory seems to unfortunately also carry the potential of sometimes making us way too sad, or should I say depressed, or maybe as well. Especially in that young age when we are still learning, observing and learning to observe. Well, I'm glad at least this SpongeBob outro music didn't go to that extent. It just scared kids apparently. Yeah, how bad can that get? In fact, when you hear this track though, just like me, you might say, how can this ever be scary? It's in fact happy, silly, just how a SpongeBob outro should be. And I remember listening to it even as a kid and never think of it as anything alarming. So clearly, it mustn't be the case with all kids. But looks like this makes some of us feel uncomfortable, and I completely understand. The so-called theme song of the so-called movie A Day with SpongeBob, which we discussed in the 4th tier, makes me feel a bit odd, and I can very well be all alone in that. Well, I'm sure there would be more examples of such songs that I can mention, so I completely get it that this can be bothersome to someone. Especially in the years of infancy, cause I learned how in music sometimes notes go in and out of the tune in order to create a certain situation or drama, suspense if you would, which we as adults understand, but kids still trying to understand stuff with zero grasp over the concept of drama itself see it as a weird mistake that spoils the whole experience for them, as it is said that in fact infants can tell when a wrong note is played in a musical piece. But they have not yet learned to absorb the scenarios where wrong notes actually turn out to be useful in order to establish a certain feeling. See it as not being able to get an adult joke. Such a sigh of relief when kids don't get those sneaky wordplays, yeah? As opposed to the case of such humor, in music apparently not understanding is less safe. This is in a nutshell of what I found about it anyway. But yeah, despite whether you found this music scary or not, either way, you're not alone.
Knowledge can never replace.
Patrick is smart. Okay, here we go again. Of course, if someone in a show is obviously shown as a... Okay, let's use a decent word. Shown as a fool by the writers themselves, why wouldn't there be a theory of him proving just the opposite of that? Because that's where the thrill lives. But after using Patrick as a meme so many times in situations to describe illogic and silliness, are we now going to theorize him actually being intelligent all of a sudden? I wonder how many Patrick jokes it is going to contradict. Well, despite, we are going to check out the instances that this theory is based off. Other than that one episode, by the way, which usually comes to mind time and again when we talk about Patrick's intelligence, the season 4 episode Patrick's Smart Pants. That shouldn't be considered, as all that was possible due to Patrick being under a brain coral. So let's check some other random examples when the wind in the bikini bottom blew just right for the starfish to absolutely amaze us.
We could filter the CO2 through our ballast tanks, refire the engines, and ride the shockwave out of here.
Wow.
Good thing he didn't pull the secret string opening the secret compartment of my secret box, revealing one embarrassing snapshot of SpongeBob at the Christmas party. If he hadn't hung that stupid dollar in the first place, I mean, it's not like it looks any different than a regular dollar. Why hang it? You could just stick any old dollar bill up on the wall. No one would even know the difference. You might as well just reach into my wallet, pull out a dollar, and put it on the wall. And it would
Hurry, Patrick, take out your wallet.
I don't see where you're going with this. Hey, a dollar!
What conclusion should we draw from all this? Well, let's just say that the clumsy head of Patrick has its own little moments time to time. And if not smart, Patrick is maybe a little less dumb than he's mostly deemed as. He has the potential, it seems, that sure comes into picture when most needed and least expected. And it's fine if we are unaware of that tendency of Patrick, cause looks like Patrick himself is not much aware of it.
We're going through with your plan, Patrick.
Yay!
What plan?
A monster.
SpongeBob killed many people. As a child, did it ever happen to you that you're watching some cartoon show and someone kinda dies in it and you just cannot help but wonder about it for coming days while brushing your teeth after dinner and getting ready for the school next day? Just as bizarre these moments were back then, they remain today. It is also amazing to realize how they just let someone die or in a cartoon apparently made for kids. I'm in fact these days trying to write such a video on a cartoon. Any guesses? Well, one thing's for sure, more innocent looking the series is, darker the feeling it's likely to create when it suggests someone's demise. SpongeBob, being a perfectly normal and innocuous show, has a lot to offer to us in that regard. Immediately old fans might be attacked by images like these, or this one, or even this. There are, of course, many more. But if we're gonna do justice to the name of the entry, then tighten your seatbelts to have a look at this freak of a scene, which we're finishing off Tier 6 with.
was my job.
I'm so sorry. I can't stop it.
This is not killing, it's a freaking genocide. Incidental 61. Remember Incidental 70?
Hey, SpongeBob's back!
This is the tier 7 version of such incidentals. Meet Incidental 61. And no, it's not a baby Mr. Krabs. It also is a male crab though, but it has only 6 legs. It made a couple of appearances in season 1, like in the episode Pickles. Interestingly, the same episode from which Incidental 70 got famous. And he was also in Walking Small, again from season 1. As well, it was a part of the storyboard of the season 2 episode
Christmas who?
where he tried to convince Squidward to come out of the house, but didn't make it to the final episode when it came out. And after those appearances in season 1, it took a little break of just about 20 years to return in season 13 in the episode Upturned Girls a couple of years ago, followed by Say Aww from the same season. He's made a couple of appearances in the books too, both written by Sonia Sander and illustrated by Barry Goldberg in the year 2006. First being Clean Sweep, in which we see him along with Incidental 37A when SpongeBob and Patrick hand him the flyer that reads "Don't litter." Second one, Rocket Wreck, in which we see him in the line wanting to try the rocket ride out. So yeah, that's it. Let me see what else. Along with Incidental 11, 32, 72 and 207, he is one of the 5 regular non-fish incidentals in the show. Just wondering, had he not returned in Upturned Girls, it would have made for a nice theory that Krabby Patty indeed is making use of the crabs, as we could have said that we never got to see that mysterious crab ever again.
He runs over to the floor, he rips up a section of floorboard and says, "I'm delivering the mail to Floorboard Harry."
He, and yeah, it's he, was supposed to be a character in the show, was even a part of the storyboard of an episode but couldn't make it. Not sure if the floorboard is Harry or the actual whatever that's hiding behind the floorboard is Harry, but he kinda reminds me of Mimikyu. Makes you think if the shield is part of the character or not. The episode we're talking about is the one we talked about in Day 3, the season 3 episode in Graveyard Shift. So who replaced him? Him? No, him? Nosferatu. Yeah, we missed the opportunity to see this guy flickering the lights in place of Nosferatu, which would have looked something like this, or more specifically, had he made to the actual episode, it would have looked something like this. There are all sorts of fun teased about him, like is he from the random land, or be aware Harry, don't get no splinters, and he's Plankton hiding behind a boat in Krusty Krab to get his hands on the formula, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I agree, he has to be one of the most mysterious Bikini Bottom characters now.
This was going to be the end of the show. We used Nosferatu in the end, but once upon a time, Floorboard Harry was going to be the guy who was flicking the light switch, but we found out that Nosferatu was funnier.
Floorboard Harry. More like Storyboard Harry.
Take a last look, Patrick.
Hashtag save SpongeBob. On one hand, where we have had fans seeing nothing great in the seasons that followed after the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Boomers if you remember. On the other though, it might amaze us to recall that fans actually protested for SpongeBob to not stop. Not only way back in 2004, but much after season 3. About 10 years after what's considered the best SpongeBob era. 2014-ish, when SpongeBob was again supposedly announced to soon be cancelled. This was around the time when the hashtag Save SpongeBob came into picture. But was that all that there was to it? At a glance, it seems like a straightforward incident, seeing how SpongeBob always took stand for others. Fans decided to take stand for him and raise voice against the unairing of the beloved Sponge, which somehow worked, leading to tentative plans to actually change, and rest is history, I guess. But maybe there is more to the history linked to this hashtag, because looks like the hashtag in question predates many of the events that happened around 2014. Apparently, hashtag Save SpongeBob started from then Twitter as a trend around the time, when there was no such news of SpongeBob being stopped though. But it sure caused confusion and tension amongst the fans, making users think that the meaning of the hashtag is that the show is about to be cancelled. Knowing that there had already been such rumors around for years, and they thought maybe this was it. So this actually was a rumor, but it quickly became an unsubstantiated statement, which grew to the extent that Nick itself had to get it issued that nothing of that sort was on the way to happen. So the protest didn't need to exist. But then the question comes, what was that Twitter hashtag thingy all about, which caused all this in the first place? If the discontinuation of SpongeBob SquarePants wasn't the reason of hashtag Save SpongeBob, what then did it want to indicate? You see, well, it looks like the source of the hashtag possibly took off from Indonesian Twitter, due to a little issue that SpongeBob and a few other Nickelodeon shows faced with Indonesian Broadcasting Commission or KPI, because they found some of the Nick shows a bit too violent for the younger audience, leading to the show's runtime disappearing from the Indonesian TV. This caused the Indonesian Twitter users protesting against this and accusing KPI as well, which probably got this thing going, and the deletion of the show from the Indonesian television was misunderstood as the show's end from Nick itself, as opposed to which the problems were real, just not worldwide, rather for the Indonesian TV specifically. It's theorized that the hashtag probably got viral from the Indonesian Twitter to global Twitter somehow, so just few twists there. But I'm assuming the struggle of the hashtag must have worked, because as far as I could check, SpongeBob has been airing in Indonesia. Either way, Nick is yet to let SpongeBob go, and we still have him here with us. As lights. We've talked about the Season 3 band episode Midlife Crustacean more than once already, and here we go again. You see, we weren't quite done with all of the weirdness in the episode. What we're going to talk about now is probably not the reason for its ban, but it just is something. So when a Mr. Krabs dealing with the midlife crisis in the episode is just on its way to work, being a nuisance to the Bikini Bottom with his aging self in all sorts of ways, like spoiling a cool word for his daughter.
Have a coral day, honey!
Coral is definitely out!
Losing his arm to a Boy Scout fish.
Huh?
Don't worry, Pops. We're almost across the street.
Hey, get away from me. I don't need no snot-nosed little... Sorry you had to see that.
Ruining a ball game for some kids.
Hey, mister, could you throw the ball back over here?
Hey, how's about I join you kids?
That's okay. You can keep it.
Etc. Amid that all, he gets accused by a Bikini Bottom citizen for keeping his blinker on. Oh, wait, what? Well, this.
Come on. Move it! Could you be any slower? And you've had your blinker on for the last 5 blocks.
This footage is now known by the fans as the Ass Lights incident, and these are now called the Ass Lights. Of course, I guess this is because of a post in the X page, The Art of SpongeBob, which was made in the memory of the creator of the show. Here is what the post says. A painting from the band episode Midlife Crustacean that is named Ass Lights. In case you're wondering, no, this alone wasn't the reason of the ban. As we said, we've talked about it. But in case you skipped through it, this episode probably was banned because of SpongeBob and Patrick making Mr. Krabs steal his own mom's underpants. Yeah, right, moving on. Official in Super Sponge. You know, it's all good fan theories and stuff, all we talked about earlier. It's all fun to think about such fabricated mess, even if they are merely just ideas to give fans a sense of wonder for a moment by imagining a distorted version of the cartoon they love. It's worth it. Obviously, fanfiction exists because the ideas suggested in the fanfiction cannot. Because these unreal stories can't possibly be a part of the actual media put out by the actual makers of the series in question. So similarly, SpongeBob fans as well seek comfort and guilty pleasures in these pieces of art put together by like-minded individuals, because of course they can't ever expect such works to be found in some official media put out by the creators, like say in some game or something, right? Well, there in fact is a SpongeBob game, which kinda proves us wrong with this, because Super Sponge, a 2001 PlayStation and Game Boy Advance game, is famous for many things, like being the first ever SpongeBob video game to be released for multiple systems, first SpongeBob game to feature full motion video, and let me see, yeah, how about being that one SpongeBob game which encapsulated suggestive drawings of SpongeBob, Patrick and Sandy within it? Yeah, so well, after the studio company Climax that developed this game shut down one of its studios in 2008, it was reported in 2016 that all of the company assets were sold on eBay, including tons of development discs that belonged to both released and unreleased projects. Out of all these, there were 2 backup DVD discs of Super Sponge containing the entire library of concept art, design documents, source code and whatnot. All 11 gigabytes worth of content. which immediately got uploaded on the Internet Archive in the November of the same year. This led to a number of little discoveries by the fans who dug it up, like artworks of strange looking characters, 3D models of 2D characters in the game, VHS tapes of the glitches in the game, and fair enough. These discoveries, however, also included things like pictures of people's feet and nipples, also organs that could belong to animals or even humans, God knows. Probably as a reference guide to design the game, so okay. But it's not until the Nick Doodles folder was opened and the users learned that it'll take a lot to unlearn what they found. And they found 3 pictures that were named naughty. 2 that I'll have to censor for sure. Nick Dry, a designer of the company in question, Climax, actually admitted on X that he was the one who made the drawings, and he actually posted the original sketches to his WordPress as well, additionally showing the caption that can't be seen in the game files. A caption that said, "SpongeBob take Patrick up his starfish." Although we can't be sure why he drew them. There are more odd images and offensive things that we could talk about, but regarding the found in the game, this is what you're looking at. Fans are not always ready for moments like these when the stuff gets real. It's one thing to enjoy a fan art and completely different to actually find while looking through the sprites of the games. Needless to say, it's freaky and makes us wonder if we even need fanfiction anymore.
We've transformed CBS All Access.
Newer seasons not on streaming services. With any celebrated show, you can mostly be sure that as soon as they put anything new out, even if that's not that great, it'll be all over the place. Easily available to be watched, saved, shared, especially these days on the online platforms used to stream media. However, that's not quite the case with SpongeBob. Either you'll have to really dig or make a purchase cause somehow it's not available to be streamed on any of the major streaming services. Even with Netflix, although it offers SpongeBob in up to 20 regions, the disappointment remains cause there are at most only 3 seasons of the show available where it's available. Well, we might have the revamping of Viacom CBS streaming service to thank, as it's with the rebranding of CBS All Access into Paramount Plus that introduced their content strategy of the corporation. That has much to offer with regard to
live sports, breaking news, and a mountain of entertainment.
And perhaps it is due to this merger of
CBS, Nickelodeon, MTV, Comedy Central, BET, and Smithsonian Channel
that everything SpongeBob might eventually end up being exclusively available at Paramount Plus. And this is just the beginning of it.
Looks like Mr. SquarePants understands.
The SpongeBob incident. This was supposedly an occurring that occurred in Brazil right before the 31st Summer Olympics Games in 2016, when an episode of SpongeBob was aired. Apparently as a broadcast intrusion. Which episode? Don't ask. Some say it was some bootleg SpongeBob-like shows, some go with that Red Mist Squidward episode because why not? Anything that nobody is sure about must have been that something that everybody is unsure about, right? But whichever episode it was of this yellow sponge, what's more important is the part where it gets brown. I'm talking about the brown note that supposedly played during the episode. A note which is a supposed musical note with frequency as low as 5 to 9 Hz, which when played causes humans to poop. And that's what happened then. People all over Brazil waiting for the Olympic Games are struck by this wacky cartoon making them shit themselves. It's theorized that since television is able to produce a frequency that low, that this thing probably never happened. And however, this story still has valid reasons to exist because the Rio Olympics in question was already much disaster with various things going haywire, reason why they've been named as Apocalyptics. And somehow this SpongeBob poop story fits in and goes well along with all of the other actual things that happened. Like a barely believable and far-fetched rumor fetched by the unbelievable real events. Dan Castellaneta voiced Squidward. Although the name of this entry may appear to be a statement, it really just means to refer to it as a rumor. Cause it looks like Dan or Dan Castellaneta never actually voiced Squidward. And I guess we have good reasons to safely say that, as there is no mention of it on the internet, no SpongeBob reference in Dan Castellaneta's Wikipedia and on other sites too. there is not even a reference to Dan Castellaneta in SpongeBob's cast. If Dan had done even a single episode as the voice of Squidward, fans believe it would have been somewhere at least. That is why perhaps we can conclude looking at that all this isn't really true. So where did this whole thing come from? Well, the only source which at least the OP could find is this video by Channel Federator. That is said to be the reason why this entry is here. We see that this really could just be some misunderstanding there. At 62nd number of the 107 SpongeBob facts that this video goes through is when we get to know that.
Number 62. If Squidward reminds you of someone on occasion, it may be because he's sometimes voiced by Dan Castellaneta, the same actor who voices Homer Simpson.
Nothing much else really which could be found, but no worries, because the source where this detail was found during the making of this video is most likely the actual culprit here. That's okay, at least it led to this spot in the final tier of this iceberg.
Safety first!
Karate is sex. Sure. So this is a fan theory and is one of those ones that you find completely ridiculous at first, but you keep reading hopelessly and you at least begin to accept the reason why someone out there thought so. You just understand, yeah, I don't really think so, but yeah, I see how you got there. Okay, so there's this episode of SpongeBob in season 1 called Karate Choppers, and what basically this theory has done is that it has compared the complete storyline of the episode and little details inside of it to the idea of sex, to the point of stating that the whole episode is a metaphor for sex. And now for the glorious analogy that made it to the bottommost tier of this iceberg. In the episode, Sandy is already present in SpongeBob's house, so that definitely suggests that they are in a relationship, right? Right. As SpongeBob wears his helmet in the episode, he says,
Safety first!
The theory says that because SpongeBob winks at the camera while wearing the helmet and at the same time saying safety first, it clearly suggests condoms being important for safety in sex. Yeah, see, he's looking at the camera. Later in the night, SpongeBob calls up Sandy and tries to karate her over the phone, which Sandy tackles and says,
Nice try, Sponge Brain.
And that obviously points towards the Okay, you know what, let's move on. I think you got the idea. I'll link the theory in the description for ones who wanted me to go on, or here it is for you right here. I don't even know if I could read it here. 5572220. If you go around telling your friends that the SpongeBob's episode with the production number 5572220 is a lost episode, it's possible that one of them would ask you to in fact get lost, because they might have seen the season 3 episode SpongeBob Meets the Strangler listed under the episode 5572220 on some fan-made SpongeBob page in fandom or something. But you can very well make your comeback then and there and ask them to check out the Wikipedia to see how SpongeBob and the Strangler is actually 5572221. If you manually search for the 220 code in the wiki, you do find an entry, and for a second it might feel as you've solved the mystery when you see the code assigned to the episode. But if you notice, you'll see two production codes assigned to 5572220 and 5572208, two codes for the same episode, when all of the other episodes seem to have just one allotted to them. A quick search for the code of in the fandom site would give you the latter assigned to it. Maybe because that episode had two parts and one code is assigned to each. Either way, it looks like 220 is a question that we don't know the answer to for sure. Did the team just skip the number for some reason? Is it a lost episode? Or oh, is it again that Red Mist episode? Or maybe one episode too gruesome to be televised to general audience? How can we say that? This is where the whole creepypasta thing comes into the picture. Because other than the fans who say that SpongeBob dies in this episode, an overwhelming consensus is that Nick hit the episode for it being too scary for kids, leading us to believe this post by an anonymous user. Let's read. Hello. I can't tell you my name because if I do, it could put me in more danger than I am currently. So you can just refer to me by the nickname Greasy Steve. I used to work at Nickelodeon as a storyboarder for the show SpongeBob. I have decided that the world needs to know about something. There is a cancelled episode of SpongeBob called SpongeBob's Revenge. All of the normal writers were out that day, so we had to get a replacement writer. I'll get to them later. For now, I'll just say that they were a troubled person. The episode starts with SpongeBob watching TV with Gary. Except in this episode, Gary is Mouse for no discernible reason. I guess the writer thought it would be funny. SpongeBob is watching TV and having a good time until the news comes on. The news is going over normal news stuff, like all of the disappearances and unusual in the area. SpongeBob then makes a joke about socialists in relation to the murders and disappearances. There is then a knock on the door. It's Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs then asks, "SpongeBob, me boy, may you look at that wall and not turn back around?" SpongeBob then hesitantly agrees and looks at the wall. Mr. Krabs then steals Gary and runs off. It then cuts to a few hours later card before cutting back to SpongeBob. SpongeBob then says, "Okay, Mr. Krabs, can I turn around now?" SpongeBob then turns around and asks, "Where's Mr. Krabs and Gary?" He then finds a note by Mr. Krabs that says, "Ho ho ho, SpongeBob, me boy, I stole Gary and I will turn him into meat within the next 30 minutes. Ho ho ho, you're also terminated from your position at the Krusty Krab. Ho ho ho." SpongeBob's eyes then turn red and start to bleed blood. He then collapses to the floor and lets out an agonizing scream of pure pain and suffering. He then gets back up and smiles. He goes and gets an already bloody knife from the kitchen and says, "It's time to rip and tear." It then cuts to a shot of SpongeBob skipping into Squidward's house. Inside the house, SpongeBob confronts Squidward. Squidward, despite SpongeBob's bloody eyes and bloody knife, then says in an annoyed voice like it is some sort of daily occurrence, "SpongeBob, what are you doing here at this time of the day?" SpongeBob responds, "Hey Squidward, are you going downward into the grave?" Squidward then slams the door on SpongeBob. SpongeBob then cuts through the door and says, "Here's Sponge." It then cuts to an overhead shot of the house. You can hear Squidward's screams, and the scene ends. It then cuts to the next scene. SpongeBob is then in front of Patrick's house. He knocks on Patrick's rock and it opens up. Patrick is horrified at the sponge. He shouts, "Oh no, capitalism has stolen Sponge. I knew Mr. Krabs would corrupt you." Sponge then throws his knife and Patrick. He then laughs an evil laugh and says, "Now for Mr. Krab." It then cuts to Mr. Krabs cooking Gary in the Krusty Krab. He hears an explosion and runs outside. SpongeBob is approaching a giant space fortress. He's in some science fiction super armor and holding a super shotgun. Heavy metal is playing. Mr. Krabs then rubs his eyes. It turns out he was just hallucinating. He sighs a breath of relief and then turns around to go back inside, but the slippery little sponge is blocking the entrance. Mr. Krabs is scared, so he screams. SpongeBob laughs and shouts, "This is your end, Mr. Krab. Your reign of tyranny over fast food industry is over." The crab then responds, "I didn't do it to hurt you. I just wanted the money." SpongeBob then says, "I am now more powerful than I have ever been. Even King Triton will fear me now." SpongeBob then runs up to breaks Mr. Krabs' neck. SpongeBob then uses his sponge powers to fly away. He flies over Bikini Bottom and releases his hand. Fire then flies out of his hand and then rains down on the city. He laughs as the city is wiped out of existence. The episode then ends there. This episode was of course very disturbing, so there was an investigation. After later investigation, it turns out the writer of this episode was a cultist and who had a sick sense of humor. They escaped before we could send them to jail. The episode itself was fully finished because the producer said to just keep working on it. That was before they actually saw it. I wanted to let people know because wait, who's knocking the door? Not bad, and believable too if you somehow managed to avoid the last few words. Well, it could very well be the case, or if that was too depressing, then let me relieve you by saying that it is also possible that it is simply a production error and nothing else.
I want to be Dirty Dan.
Dirty Dan is Dan Schneider. To understand this, we'll need to understand two things. Who is Dirty Dan and why is Dan Schneider, the CEO of Nick, in here? Well, first off, for Dirty Dan, we'll need to talk about the season 2 episode Survival of the Idiots, in which SpongeBob and Patrick, despite being especially prohibited from getting inside the tree dome for it being winter, the hibernation period for Sandy,
That means you, SpongeBob.
of course get inside, and upon seeing an inflated Sandy sleeping, dreaming in the treehouse, trying to catch some Dirty Dan and some Pinhead Larry,
I've had enough of your dastardly deeds, Dirty Dan. I'm gonna get you and your partner, Pinhead Larry.
decide to play around being those characters,
Look out, Sandy. I'm Dirty Dan.
mainly fighting over who's gonna be the Dirty Dan.
I'd say I'm Dirty Dan.
Probably because he was leader of Pinhead Larry in their duo in Sandy's dream and so nobody wanted to be Pinhead Larry.
Who you calling Pinhead?
Although this all eventually wakes Sandy up, but that's beside the point. Let's just remember Dirty Dan for now, one of the outlaws from Sandy's dream. And now Dan Schneider, the CEO of Nick, is in here because of certain allegations and theories about him, including alleged sexual behavior, his verbal abuse on the set, and how he has a thing for feet, like how it's theorized about Patrick. Which makes fans and theorists link these Dan Schneider accusations and things with the bits and pieces from the SpongeBob and other Nick shows. In case of this entry, this Dirty Dan guy, who they see as a hint from the writers about the Dirty Dan, supposedly to warn us all about the whole situation way back in 2001, remarkably predating the said allegations. r/SpongeBob Gore. r/SpongeBob Gore is a subreddit that welcomes gory re-edits of SpongeBob media by the users. It's a still active page on Reddit, so let's in fact have a look, why not? SpongeBob Gore, like SpongeBob didn't already have enough of it. Subreddit dedicated to adding blood and such to SpongeBob scenes. Well, of course, it can include fan art as well, I'm sure. Like, you know, stuff that our morbid curiosity always wanted to see. Tom finally cooking Jerry, Sylvester finally eating Tweety, Elmer finally killing Bugs Bunny. That kind of stuff, you know, which I might have to censor. But this could be your next stop. I won't stop you. Anyways, this was the very last entry of the very last tier of this very first Iceberg video I ever attempted. So, you know, go explore this or maybe anything else we discussed in this Iceberg. Links are in the description. There is a lot of stuff in the description, you know. Other than that, I guess I have nothing better to say, but just that. Thank you. If I'm not alone and you're still here, see you around.